to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The school board will convene tonight into closed session to consider the employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility under Wisconsin statutes 19.85(1) for varsity boys basketball coach, varsity boys assistant coach, special education aide, employee handbook, COVID language, staff exit interviews, and to consider and discuss employee performance and supervisory oversight for specific employees relative to school operations in the 2021 school year. Did we have anyone sign up to speak, Carl? No guests wish to speak?
You did want to speak?
Okay. We've got one. 3 minutes, and Carl will keep time.
Okay. My husband and I just came here today because we know everyone's concerned about reopening schools, and we just wanted to say how, like, as parents, we really feel strongly about the importance of having masking in the school building if we're having any in session, just because it follows the CDC guidelines to help prevent the spread of COVID. We want we all want school and things to return to normal as much as possible, but we have to make sure that we do it in a safe way and a way that protects the health of not only the students, but the teachers and everyone else who works in the building, and then everybody that they come in contact with outside of the school building as well. They may have, I think we all have people we care about outside of here that are considered at risk, and I think that as a community, we pride ourselves in being a community here. We can do this thing to help protect all of us and keep all of us safe. We require immunizations for students to come to school, and wearing a mask is far less invasive than having an immunization. It's not necessarily going to be easy. It's not something that you do once and can forget about. They have to do that every day when they come in. But I think that, in this world where there are so many things that we see on the news that are going wrong and so many big problems that feels like we don't have anything we can do, we really can do this one small thing and really get our students behind that we're doing this together. We're pulling together to do this as a community to keep everybody safe. They really take a lot of pride in being pioneers here at Sevastopol. I think that's something that I love about having my kids come to school here for. And I do feel like everyone pulls together really well when we need to. And I think if we can, make it about, it's not going to be easy, but we can all do hard things. Let's send that message to our kids. Let's not make this about what we or they or anyone wants to do personally. Let's not make it something that our high schoolers can feel is going to be a personal judgment against them from their peers. There's enough pressure already on our students. If it's a requirement, then everybody's doing it, and they don't have to feel like, oh, well, my parents want me to wear a mask, but my friends might make fun of me for it, or I don't want to worry about what my friends might think of me because of this. I think that we can eliminate that pressure just by having it a requirement that everybody's doing, and make it so that it's not something that each individual has to kind of defend their choice either way. So I guess. All right, sorry. That's it then.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. If there is no one else, then we have a presentation by Dr. Fogarty from the Door County Medical Center on reopening schools safely. Did you want to introduce her, Mr. Lucci?
I think you just did, yes.
Well, I don't know if you wanted to say anything about her.
Well, we've been meeting, I don't know how often we've met. It's almost every, Tuesdays or, I don't know what day of the week is, weekly, and yeah, with the Department of Health Services, and so she's addressed other school boards in the region, so I thought we should have her here as well.
So my name is Dr. Amy Fogarty. I'm a pediatrician at Door County Medical Center. I'm finishing up my 11th year there. I've served as the medical advisor for all of the schools in the school districts in the county for a lot of those years. And I'm also working very closely with the school nursing program, which is whom you contract with on a part-time basis. I've been, as part of the hospital and as my role as a medical advisor for the school districts, I have been meeting with public health. All of the superintendents and principals in the county have been invited. Myself and our school nursing team weekly. I think this is our 4th week that we've met. And I've also been I've been meeting with the hospital and the school nursing teams to try to figure out the best way that the hospital and the school districts can work together in a partnership to try and reopen schools safely. This is my 3rd meeting this week. I've been at nearly all of the school board meetings that have taken place in the county to discuss the same topic. So the information that you're going to hear has been shared with the other districts. The first thing that I've been asked to share is, as we've been talking and as we're looking at reopening schools, there's a couple of things that I've been asking school boards and teachers and administrators as you weigh these very difficult decisions to consider. The first is that returning to school in person is of the utmost importance. I take care of a lot of the kids in this county and kids that go to this school district. And in the last 4 months, I have seen more suicide attempts, resulting serious suicide attempts. Not like I took a Tylenol, not that they're not all serious, but life-threatening suicide attempts, which have resulted in ICU admissions and inpatient hospitalizations. I have called CPS more times in the last 4 months to have kids removed from homes. Yep.
Can you tell what CPS is?
Oh, I'm sorry, Child Protective Services. We work very closely in the last 4 months to have kids removed from homes than I typically do over several years' time. We've seen food issues both ways. So part of your students don't have enough to eat. The other part are at home gaining 25, 31, huge amounts of weight, pounds, huge amounts of weight. I'm in the middle of my back to school physical time. So these are kids that I typically will see once a year, and those are the things that I see more than one time in a day. So, and we know that school academically plays a huge role, and we know that socially it plays a huge role, but there's a lot of other ways that I think sometimes are underestimated. And then you take just the economy, especially an economy of a place like Door County, where if kids don't go to school, we don't have parents that can go to work, especially when we get to younger kids. So altruistically, I'm here because it's the right thing to have the kids back in school. Selfishly, I'm here on behalf of the hospital because a lot of our employees have kids that go to this district. And we'd like them at the hospital so that we can help care for the people in the community. Because if we don't have people there, we can't care for people. And I think that leads into one of the other really big things is that your most limited resource is your staff. Likely, if you are going to have to close down school, it will not necessarily be because of kids, it'll be because of staff. Because you don't have enough staff in the building to open. And we're in the same position. And so doing everything that you can as a board and as administrators to protect your staff is where you're going to need to be if you're going to be able to not just open in September, but to stay open in October and November and December and January. Because the decisions that you make are not ones for the first quarter or until Christmas vacation. Realistically, the leading pediatric vaccinologists that sit on the FDA committees and the CDC committees in terms of rolling out vaccines, if one of the 5 vaccines that is in mass production right now and in phase 3 testing in fall works, and there are no issues with distribution or with manufacturing, spring of 22. So that's 2 school years. The vaccine will likely be 2 doses. We need to have at least 70% vaccinated to get what we would consider to be herd immunity if the vaccines have an 80% efficacy, which is reasonable. That would be a reasonable estimate. So we need to get 600 million doses distributed in the United States. So these are, it's not where we were in March, where we had to make hasty decisions because we needed to make those decisions because we didn't know what was coming and we were trying to do the best that we could at that point. And that was the right decision at the time, but at this point we're 6 months later and we're looking at what we're trying to do in terms of long term. There's a lot of things that people have suggested and recommended in terms of ways to reopen schools safely. I think the easiest statement is that there is a risk associated with reopening schools. There is a risk related specifically to COVID. Where we are sitting right now, the risk of not reopening is significantly higher than that. Everything we do is a weighing of risks and benefits. And that's not that we shouldn't try to mitigate the risk, but we need to take that into account when we're making decisions. The three things that we've been talking about a lot on these countywide meetings in terms of helping school districts make decisions are, number one, keeping sick kids and staff out of the building. And I'll explain in a little bit how we're going to help you do that with the school nursing staff that you currently have. And I know that later in the agenda that's going to be discussed as one of your agenda items in terms of what level of staffing you choose to have. The second thing is social distancing and masking. A lot of things are thrown around, particularly with the social distancing. If you look, some school districts are saying, put 12 kids on a bus, or we're only going to be able to take this many kids on the school bus route and everyone else has to find their own way, or whatever it is. I think you get around a lot of things if you look at just having kids wear masks and staff wear masks, especially when social distancing isn't possible in situations like on a bus or passing in hallways. There's a lot of debate around what language should be used. Should we make it required? Should we make it an expectation? Is it strongly encouraged? Is it recommended? Is it suggested? That's something that you all will have to decide. I will say that I personally like required. There's going to be medical exceptions. In kids, those are relatively few, to be honest. Some of them will have to do with things like ventilators and tracheostomies. And then others will be related to developmental, sensory sorts of situations where they can't tolerate a mask on their face. But that's going to be a small number of kids, even young kids. There's debate about, well, how young should we put on masks? The CDC will talk about 2. The American Academy of Pediatrics kind of debates the 3, 4, 5 age range. I think it should be the expectation that all of the kids, the intent is to have all of the kids masked as much as possible, understanding that there's going to be the one-offs, right? So yes, there's going to be a few kids in your district who, for whatever reason, medically should not wear a mask. But then you deal with them as the one-offs because, again, it's a game of mitigating risk, right? So if you have 23 out of 25 kids masked 80% of the time, you're in a way better spot than if you have 1 of 25 kids masked 5% of the time when they're walking out of the car and their parents are watching them. And so thinking about that numbers game and trying to mitigate risk as best you can, understanding that you serve a lot of people and families in the district. And then the last part of it is related to, where are we? We did the social, sick kids out of school, the social distancing. I'm sorry?
Sick kids and some kids.
Oh, the cleaning in schools. And I think you guys Kyle had shared with me that there's already been a little bit of plan in that, in terms of the hand sanitizers and the wiping down hard surfaces that are being reused. And the plan is going to look different, and it should look different depending on the age of the kids, right? So a kindergarten classroom should not look like 11th grade biology or whatever, right? So you can take a 16-year-old and tell them to park it at a desk, put on a mask, don't touch other people's stuff, clean your desk before you leave. You can't say that necessarily to a 5-year-old, so how do you modify their ability to social distance or to wear masks or to clean their own hands and bathroom breaks and all that kind of stuff. And so taking those three things into consideration when you're making decisions, I think you're probably going to end up in a pretty reasonable spot. And none of them really cost a lot of money, minus maybe some hand sanitizers. So you're not talking about investing in, HEPA filters with air circulation, air recirculators, and some of these other things that schools are starting to debate and talk about and wonder where you're going to invest your resources, because you do have not just finite staff but finite finances as well. Very briefly, in terms of the school nursing, I do want to touch on that because, again, I know that's coming up later in your agenda. The hospital has developed a flow chart. The intent behind it is not necessarily to instruct school nurses. More of it is based on intent to instruct parents in terms of what will happen if their child either comes to school symptomatic or develops symptoms at school. Part of what the hospital has put together and part of what the Department of Public Instruction has recommended is that schools have a hotline for parents, staff to call if they're concerned about COVID-type symptoms. The hospital has provided a hotline since this began for the entire county. Just this week, we have decided to also continue to staff our COVID testing tent, is what we call it at the hospital, because at the beginning it was a tent. It's not anymore, but we still call it the tent. But we are hiring 2 full-time RNs and an LPN to staff the COVID tent and to man the hotline. And so we've created, it's a marketing tool. Our marketing department's created it to be put on cards or to be put as part of another document. Some school districts are putting it on magnets for people to have with the COVID hotline number. In terms of working through school nursing, 2 things that we've done. We've developed a consent form. It is designed to be a voluntary consent form, so it is not a compulsory consent form. That if their child were to develop symptoms at school, that they could be tested for COVID at the school nurse's discretion. And then the flow chart is how the school nurse would be handling kids that became symptomatic or arrived to school with symptoms. The nuts and bolts of it are basically, if a consent is there, a sample is collected. We are training our school nurses to do that on site. We are working on operationalizing the logistics of how to do that. I'm not on that committee. To deal with how do we get samples back to the hospital, how do we call back results, who's responding, all of those sorts of things. And that's designed for staff as well. If there's not a consent on file and the parent's notified, they can either give verbal consent, the test will be collected, or they can refuse consent, at which point the recommendation would be that they would go either contact their medical provider or contact the COVID tent to see if testing is indicated. So that can be followed up on. One big piece of that document, there's a little pink bubble over on the right-hand side that says if testing is declined, that the recommendation from public health is quarantine for 14 days. That's a long time. So I think it's going to be in the parents' best interest to consent to the testing. And I think that parents, realistically, I've been telling my own kids, you're probably going to get tested a couple of times this year, maybe more than a couple of times. Either because you had somebody in your class that was tested and had symptoms, somebody tested positive, or because you have a sore throat, and it may or may not be COVID, but you'll end up being tested. The hospital so there's been a lot of debate, especially recently, about overwhelming testing systems. The hospital currently, so I received another update today, that July 22nd, we're working on the calibration of the machine, and we're supposed to be going live with in-house testing. We have 5,000 initial kits, so that'll be same-day testing. We have had same-day testing. We've had extremely limited supply of tests, and so those have been reserved for hospital admissions or urgent or emergent surgeries. So they have not been used with the general public. We've been using send-out testing. So that's going to change things drastically for people in the county in terms of being able to find out the results quickly and make decisions about work and school and those sorts of things. I think that was probably all the information that I had to share, and unless you guys have questions, I've been answering lots of questions. Yeah, I don't know how to call on people if there's a rule or something.
What you want.
Oh, okay. There's rules other places I was. So.
You're okay.
Just a couple of things. What are your thoughts on temperature checks? And also, would you see the school nurse services including some mental health services? You mentioned the suicides, the serious suicides you're seeing, the eating situations. Would these be some things that the nurses might deal with?
No. So in terms of the mental health aspect, that would not be within the school nursing
Okay.
scope. They are currently, school nurses provide services like health action plans. They do things like medication administration. They do look, most of the schools utilize them for dealing with sick kids during the course of the day, those sorts of things. The mental health aspect, you guys have the STRIDE program here as far as I know. So that would be, and I've been in contact with people that have been utilizing that, or who have been administering it, let's say that. And I know that they're working very hard to find additional providers, but the fact of the matter is it's not just school-age kids, it's everybody that's having significant mental health concerns right now.
Right.
And the number of providers has always been in a shortage, and it's even more so now. And so they are looking for people to try to improve that program. It truly is just a matter of finding trained people. In terms of your question about temperature checks, people have been all over on temperature checks. I believe your athletic trainers are doing temperature checks right now. The hospital was doing them for a period of time, and then we stopped. Part of the debate is the utility of doing temperature checks. At the hospital, we were having a little bit of a hard time, mostly because we have sick people coming to see us. They're coming here because they have a fever, so if you...
Go home.
Yeah, well, right, and that's just the hard part, right? So that's exactly the situation, is that we have sick people that are coming to us, and we have volunteers or untrained medical professionals who are saying, you have a fever, you're not supposed to be, you know, and they don't know who's here because they have a fever and who's here because they don't, or for a different reason. So asking those people to take on that kind of a decision-making role was a lot. One of the big downsides to doing temperature checks, which we also saw at the hospital when we were first trying to roll out this stuff, is there's bottlenecks. And when there's bottlenecks, you have people that are grouping. Especially you get 50 kids that come off a bus, and now they're all supposed to stand in line and get their temperatures checked. Well, if any of you have ever seen 50 kids get off a bus, they're crazy, right? I mean, they're like all over the place. And so then do you like put 6 feet apart little spots like all the way down the sidewalk? I mean, you could. Logistically you could. But how much time are you spending and how much logistics are you doing for information which may or may not necessarily be of value? I don't know. It's one that people go back and forth on. I definitely see both sides of it. I'm not necessarily opposed. I think you just really need to look at the utility and what you're going to do with the information. I think the school setting is very different from a hospital setting. You would have to have somebody that's trained and then have something to do with that kid. So if the 17th kid in line, you do the thermometer and it's 100, then you have a second person there that's going to take that kid somewhere else. I mean that would be what you would have to do. And then what happens when the 19th kid tests at 102, and then the person already took the 17th kid, so there's downfalls to it. I don't know how often it's really going to happen and how often that information is going to be necessarily useful, because especially in kids, that is often not a early symptom, if there are symptoms. So I don't feel strongly one way or the other. I think that there's reasonable arguments on both sides.
What about for staff?
But I would honestly say, what we've done at the hospital, and that's the other part, right? Okay, so at the hospital, we've kind of said, okay, employees are grown-up human beings, right? Maybe we should just let them be grown-up human beings, and if they have a fever, they shouldn't come. And so we've kind of gone to that type of a model. I am still asked every time I walk in the door, am I feeling well today? There's definitely days I would like to just say no and see what happens. But no, I mean, so that's what we've gone to at the hospital, and I'm not saying that's necessarily the right model. I think you also need to look at the logistics of what kind of thermometer are you going to use, how reliable are they. We went and bought all these infrared thermometers. My temperature was not above 95 degrees for like 3 months. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure I wasn't near dead, but, you know, so you have to look at the accuracy of that, and there is faults with the infrared thermometers. You're also, so the other really big argument against temperature checks is you cannot take a temperature 6 feet away. And so you're subjecting whomever that staff member is to coming within close contact of every one of those kids on a repeated basis. Maybe that's a risk that's worth it if they're masked. I don't know. I think that would be kind of an interesting debate.
Thank you.
Dave, you had a question? Oh, sorry, Jerry is next in line.
Just some fact versus fiction, because I've often seen this physician from Stanford on TV, and he was on the other day talking strictly about this topic of kids. And that the numbers are, in the United States, kids 15 and under, there's been 29 deaths. Same period of time, there's been 100 deaths in that age group with the regular flu.
Yep.
Okay, so secondly, his premise is looking at the data. Children are not as infectious as adults are in giving it to other people. So there's a reduced risk. So when people say, well, we can't have the kids we're going to get, there's a reduced risk. I mean, kids are less likely to give you COVID as opposed to adults who are likely to give you COVID. So, so that those are both true.
Yeah, well, yes. So the thought behind kids being bad transmitters, especially the younger they are, is kind of like polio, actually. So kids are really bad at transmitting polio because they don't actually have the protein that the polio virus likes to adhere to, and there's some theory that perhaps it's the same with COVID. And here's the deal. So when we're talking about reopening schools, I love kids. I've got 4. I have a career caring for them. We're not so much interested in protecting the kids as a numbers game. It's the staff that we worry about. And again, back to the finite resource, every school district has a number at which you can't operate school anymore because you don't have sufficient staff. Subs are always difficult to find. Your subs are going to be way harder to find this year because you're going to have less that want to do it, right? So a big portion of the sub pool is retired teachers that just kind of do it because they like kids and, you know, whatever. So that's going to be, I mean, and I know that even just this last January with regular flu, there were active conversations that were happening about the possible need to close schools because of staffing. As Sturgeon Bay was starting to approach 18 and 19% of their high schoolers being out on a day, you can operate a school with 4 out of 5 of your high schoolers there. You can't operate a school with 4 out of 5 teachers and no subs. And so again, it's back to that. And you guys, I mean, there are people on your staff that interact with kids on a daily basis that have a higher risk. And kids, while they may not be, especially the younger ones, as efficient at transmitting, their opportunities are a lot bigger, right? So again, back to the high school classroom, sit here, don't touch other people, don't touch other people's stuff, put on your mask. Kindergarten classroom, I mean, it happens in my office every day, right? I mean, they're just running around, they're licking the floor and sucking on their feet, and I mean, and I love kids, but they are germ people. Like, they just share all kinds of stuff. And so I think that's where that big difference comes from. And it is, and I think the other part of it is that when you compare it to flu, our population has our entire population is not vulnerable to flu. Because of the vaccine and because a lot of us have had flu. Right now, virtually, our entire population is vulnerable to COVID. simultaneously. And that's where the big concern is because, you know, I've had flu and I get my flu vaccine every year, my kids get their flu vaccine every year, and it's not a perfect vaccine, but it's better than nothing. And the people that I come in contact with have had their flu vaccine, or, you know, and so it's just that's where the numbers game gets to be different, because we literally have, while the cases are high, I mean, Kyle and I were just talking about this, right? Door County has 20,000 people in it, ish.
27.
Okay, 27,000. We have 65 positive cases. There's a lot of people that haven't had it. Let's say we're only finding 1 in 10. Let's say we're only finding 1 in 100. We are still, the vast majority of us have not had the virus. And so it puts us all vulnerable at the same time. And that's what we worry about, because if all of us get the virus at the same time, then that's when we can't have school. And more concerning, what's going to crush us is that we aren't going to be able to care for them.
I'm glad you mentioned the American Academy of Pediatrics, because I thought that was a good source of sound information, so I'm glad you said that. But in there they mentioned, and I'm asking about classrooms and stuff, and you talk social distancing, and everyone says that, right? The big word is 6 feet. But they said that if you get to 3 feet, and I'm really kind of talking in a room in a classroom, right? Because we're limited on space, and they always say where feasible. But they say when you get to 3 feet, you nearly reach the 6 foot benefit. Would you have a comment on that?
I think it depends if a mask is on or not. If you've seen a kid in the sunlight sneeze, 3 feet ain't not anywhere close to far enough. So I think that's that risk, right? 6 feet didn't magically fall out of the air. 100.4 didn't, I mean, it kind of magically fell out of the air, right? So we have to have an objective line. Everything in medicine is like that, right? When do you reach 99% efficacy? Drugs are based on pharmacokinetics and expiration dates, right? You have 100.4 is the definition of fever. And so you have to have some sort of objective line. 6 feet is 6 feet because it's something that most people can understand, and it's something that is reasonable. A lot of the European studies use a meter, which is 3 feet or thereabouts. So 3 feet is better than 3 inches. Is it as good as 6 feet? I don't know. Yes, 6 feet is very much up for debate. I think that the closer you get, the more important masking becomes. I mean, I would wager, so we're more than 3 feet right now. If I were to sneeze or cough, probably wouldn't be super happy if I didn't have a mask on. And again, that's, and I ask people that, right? Like, so you're asking your staff to go into rooms like that. I am comfortable seeing patients every day and their families because they are always masked in my office. If they weren't, I would not feel comfortable seeing them. I really wouldn't. And that's basically the same thing that you're asking staff to do. And yes, they have the same 25 kids. I see 20 different families a day. But they're also in much closer contact for much longer periods of time. So I guess I always ask, you know, how would you feel going into that environment? Because, like I said, I know that I would not feel comfortable.
And a follow-up, obviously, a critical thing that everyone agrees to is effective, regular hand washing properly for a long enough time. Is that valid?
Yeah.
Like that? And because all this disinfectant, do you see any concern with young kids with their constantly using disinfectant versus washing their hands? I mean, it would be better.
I think that there has to be kind of a little bit of a line. I'll be super honest, Dave. Especially as we're getting into November, December, January. I'm not here to like pass judgment, but when kids walk in, like the 4 and 5 year olds, I know which ones go to Southern Door when I walk in the room because I look at their hands. And their hands are beet red and chapped and cracked because they're really good at having their 4 and 5 year olds wash their hands at Southern Door. And their soap is really not nice to hands. So I do think that, yes, you need to wash your hands. I put hand sanitizer on probably 200 times a day, no joke. I literally, like, multiple times a day have to wash my hands because it's literally like peeling off my hands as I rub them together the next time. And so, yes, hand washing is important, but it's also important what you you can wash your hands and then touch this thing and then rub your eye. I mean, it's what you do after that too. So behaviorally, even doctors, as we've been wearing masks, a lot of us have said we had no idea how often we would wash our hands and then touch our face somewhere close to our nose or mouth. And we're now prevented from doing that because of masks, behaviorally, how much we've had to get used to just in doing that. So yes, hand washing is a good idea. I think you need to be a little bit careful about how often and the expectation behind it. A lot of times I think as you're moving from one place to another, I think is a good time to wash hands, one activity to another. I think easy access to hand sanitizer is good. It certainly is helpful. I think, and all of these things are moderately helpful, right? Like if you're really good at washing your hands but do nothing else, you're probably not that well protected. If you only mask but do nothing else, you're probably not that well protected. And so it's, you take everything, you say, I'm gonna wash my hands, I'm gonna wear a mask, I'm gonna try and stay apart, I'm gonna stay home if I'm sick, and you add those things together and you end up a little bit closer to a model that's sustainable.
Well, one more comment, sorry, is that makes a lot of sense because we're layering the protection to make sure it increases. Because I think the other thing is that there will be some challenge on really young kids to get them to wear it effectively, right? But I think it's good that you're here helping us understand, and we want staff members, depending on how we move forward, if there's that one kid that just isn't successful at wearing it, even though it's not, I don't know if it's the end of the world or not. It's kind of the question is, we make sure we're taking all the precautions, but one or two might not work well.
Yeah.
But at least you have it layered, right? So
yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing is I've been trying to encourage people who don't have a lot of experience with younger kids or older kids. Kids are, I like educable, people will say trainable, right? So yes, absolutely, the first 2 weeks of school, every teacher and every aide and every person in this building is gonna they should just have a tape recorder that just continuously plays, put on your mask, put on your mask, put on your mask, don't touch your face, put on your mask. Because that's all they're gonna be saying. That's all they're gonna be saying. But if you get through that period of time, it's just like classroom rules and expectations, right? As you get through that, you can get used to wearing them. I wear this thing probably 12 to 15 hours a day. It was hard at first, it was. I had to find the right mask and how it fits and it doesn't fog up your glasses when I'm wearing them and that kind of stuff. But I was telling the story, so on Monday I tried to sneak out over my lunch hour to get a quick bike ride. And I was pulling out of the hospital parking lot on my bike and I was like, this feels so weird, like what is going on? I feel so strange. And I was biking with my mask on. Like I'd walked out of the hospital, got my bike, and I was biking with my mask on. So you do get to that point, and it is just something that you live with. And nobody thinks it's fun, right? I mean, everybody just wishes we could just go back to the way it was last year or in January. And I 100% agree with that. I do. But we can't. And that doesn't mean we just should say, well, I just want it to be like it was before and we're just going to ignore it. But I think that, in order to open schools effectively over the long term, it's just going to have to be there. And all the kids that I've been seeing since I've been seeing kids again, so like mid-May or June, I always congratulate them for wearing their mask. I always tell their parents I'm really glad they're practicing because they're probably going to need to wear it when they go to school. And it is something that it's something to get used to. It's something nobody really particularly enjoys. But you can get used to it, and you can get kids to get used to it. Just like you get your, right? I don't know, you can talk about, but right, so like the first day of school, 4K, right, is like a hot mess. You got kids crying, they're like being dragged places, they're like hiding in corners. And if you look at like how the second week of 4K goes, right, they're like, got their backpacks, they know right where to line up, it's like boom, 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 they know exactly, this is letter day, I put my sheet of paper here, this is where my lunch count goes, like they got it down, right? And so you can teach kids that, and it's going to be hard at first. I'm not undermining that or underestimating that at all. And it's not just going to be the 4K kids. You're going to have some 6 and 7-year-olds that have a very difficult time wearing masks. I had one in my office on Wednesday. A kid was 6.5, and it was like, there's like drool dripping from it and like hanging from an ear, and it was not effective. And you are going to have that in the classrooms, and that's going to be part of it. It is. Quiet side of the room over here. Holy cow.
I got
Administrators and board members.
and I got a question about masking. Everyone's always saying it's to protect the other person, but wearing a mask does protect yourself too, right?
Does. Yeah, I mean, you can tell, well, you can tell, right? So you can just, so that happens to me all the time during the course of the day when I take a deep breath, it sucks in, right? And it sucks in because, I mean, it's slowing down airflow coming through. There's different grades of masks. This is obviously a hospital mask. It's not a surgical grade mask. When I'm in the office, I typically wear a surgical grade mask, which is much harder to breathe through. It's not an N95, but it's a surgical grade mask. So there is varying efficacy depending on, is it 1 layer thick of cloth or 2 layers thick of cloth, how tightly is the cloth woven, all of those sorts of things. You can read lots of interesting articles about that. But at the end of the day, I mean, I don't want to say something's better than nothing, but at some point you do get to that a little bit. And it is, partially it is, if I cough or if I sneeze, it's going to catch most of what I cough and sneeze out inside my mask as opposed to pushing it out. Whatever does get pushed out is going to be significantly reduced, and it'll land here as opposed to there. But yeah, I mean, it does slow down airflow coming in. I mean, that's not how much, depends on the mask, I guess.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very
Thank you.
helpful.
Thank you. Okay, before we move on, I'm just going to mention that last week our former superintendent, Steve Crummell, passed away. And it's customary to do a moment of silence, but I think he deserves a few words because he came to us in a time that the school district wasn't doing very well. And he stuck with us for 5 years and really, I think, turned things around for us and got us moving forward. And then he came back to us several years later when we had some great division. And he did all he could in that year to move us forward. So we appreciate him. And I think 2 things Sevastopol will remember him for are his no jeans policy. Did you get that from him?
I heard about it.
And he had a sweet tooth that no one could cure. And diabetes and a bad sweet tooth. So I don't know if anybody else that worked with him has anything that they'd like to say.
You forgot the grilled cheese and the tomato soup.
Yeah, the lunch.
Yeah. Steve was a great guy, and he loved Sevastopol. Before he was here, he was in Michigan, and I run into the Michigan people all the time at CISA, and they loved him too.
So,
I'd just like to say how lucky I was to work with Steve for an extended period of time. He became a mentor to me, a father figure, and played a significant role in who I am as a person, and I'm forever indebted to him, and will continue to remember the many stories that you shared, but also the life lessons that he taught me about being a person and more importantly, how to treat people. And I'm so thankful that he was part of this school, this community, and in my life. So it means a lot to
we'll
me.
remember him. We'll remember him fondly. Then, if the board agrees, because there are things on this agenda that people are really interested in, we would move under new business items A, B, and C, and under old business item D up to now, before the consent agenda. Is that agreeable?
Would you repeat that again?
New business A, B, and C, parent survey results, recommendations, and nursing contract, and also item, item D, revisions to the 2021 calendar. Those are the items parents are most concerned with. So if that's okay, we'll move ahead with item new business A, parent survey results.
Thanks.
So you need water.
I'll wait till you get there. So we had a survey through school perceptions that was sent out to our parents through their email addresses which are in PowerSchool. Some parents maybe had more than one email address, but it was worth getting it out quickly and to everyone. You guys see that?
Yep.
Okay.
So it's there, you just need to scroll down.
Say it again.
Aaron was hiding it.
I'm too fast, okay.
Yep, you're good.
All right, so we had 300 parent responses, which we could add a few repeats. And each parent was allowed to fill out a survey for each student they had. So if you had multiple students, when you add up the number of students, it's going to be larger than 300. And we had responses in every grade level, so that's good. The first couple of questions were pretty general. If school is open for in-person instruction this fall, do you intend to send your children to school? 292 responses, 91.1% say yes, and 8.9% say no. And then based on what is currently known about COVID-19, with which educational delivery method would you be most comfortable this fall? Stay at home, remote learning only with increased expectations over what we had this spring at 15.7%. Go to school, in-person learning, 52.9%. And the first choice of being participation in a combination blend of remote and in-person learning, 31.4%. We were fortunate to have this data so we can look at it broken down by each grade level. If we go to the all grade school year planning, this compiles all 14 grade levels together. If the guidance from the DPI and Door County Public Health Department recommend that it's safe for in-school instruction this fall, how comfortable will you be having your children return to school? Extremely comfortable, 25.6%, comfortable, 57.1%, and not comfortable, 17.3%. And I want you to notice that number in 91 for not comfortable because we had 527 students represented in this. And then the next one was, would any of the following factors help you feel more comfortable? Please check all that apply. So you can answer multiple times. The number one item and number two item really close to each other, 79.5 and 76.8 are sanitizing supplies, including hand sanitizer readily available. Brock Lottenbach's been in some trainings and they said to have 1 gallon of hand sanitizer per child available for the year. He has ordered 200 gallons at this point, so he has an order in. We have some on hand, and as the year will progress, he'd order more. Classrooms and other gathering spaces cleaned and sanitized daily is also at 76.8%, so those are the two largest areas. So basically cleaning and hand supplies. At 54.9 is Department of Health and CDC regulations being followed, and 54.8 right behind it is symptom checks of employees required daily. And then we drop down to 51.1% mandatory symptom checks for every student required daily. The next one is one of the lower ones is maintaining social distancing protocols, 41.3%. And then there's the group that says there's nothing that will make me feel comfortable, 7.6%, which is 40 compared to the 91 that said they weren't comfortable. There's 40 that say there's nothing we can do to make them feel comfortable. And that's just how people can feel. That's okay. Currently, the CDC, state and county health departments are recommending but not requiring masks when social distancing is not able to be maintained. This district will need to develop a policy for the upcoming year. And the question is, would it increase your comfort level if staff were required to wear face masks? 57% say yes and 42% say no. If wearing a mask is a condition of your child attending school, will you send your child? 74.7% say yeah, they're going to send their children. 25.3, 132 say no.
Well, that makes no sense.
Maybe that makes no sense.
I mean, that the number increases of people not sending their kids from the very beginning because you're going to require masks.
If you require them to wear a mask, they're not going to send them. So saying if you have to wear it, I'm not sending them.
Yeah.
But that makes sense, Jerry, compared to the other number, because the other number is if you're not comfortable. This is saying you're making us wear a mask, we're not going to send our kids. 25% are saying if it's mandatory, we're not doing that. If wearing a mask was not required, we still encourage your child to wear a mask. 54% say yes and 45% say no, they wouldn't. Do you intend to have your child ride the bus this fall? 42%, which is significantly lower than what normally rides our buses, which is a good thing for the school district if we're trying to do social distancing. and 58% say no, they'll find their own transportation. And when Dr. Fogarty was talking about our staff and vulnerability, our bus drivers, who at this time all said, yeah, they're coming back, have the medium age that's the oldest. They're old, it's an old crew. They're most susceptible to this, and so, yeah, that's a concern. When she talked about, a couple staff members being out, it's bus drivers that if we got hit in that department, that could stop us from in-school learning first. What are your primary concerns about coming back to school? There, we got them all. Okay, the highest one, classrooms and other student gathering places not properly disinfected at 41.3%. Availability of disinfecting materials, 39.7%. Public health regulations not being followed, 38%. Having in-person interactions with others, 34.4%. Readjust to school or school life, 24%. And then just a couple low ones there at 7.9%, my child's transportation and my child's underlying health condition. If you select this box, then they could contact, so we must contact those at 7.5%. None is at 24%, and other. Do you want me to show them the technology?
Sure.
Under the contacts, each person that put down a contact, our two principals and pupil services director, did reach out to all of them starting last week. The survey ended on Monday. They were successful in all but a couple, so that was good. Technology. Based on this past spring, do you have sufficient internet access for remote learning? 82% say yes, and 17.7%, which is about what we had figured out this spring, was 18. So the survey just confirms what we knew. Which of the following are important to you in a remote learning environment? The highest is that my child feels support and has direct contact or ability to interact academically in a virtual setting with their classroom teacher and classmates. And that my child is seeing feedback on their work either through the teacher or peer reviewer, the top two. Followed closely by that my child is interested and engaged by the material. People were allowed to check more than one in this area as well. And then here's a list of other items that are entered. There's quite a long list, and Stephen will get all this work at. Who owns the devices your family has used for remote learning? Personal is 55.1, school-owned 9.9, and a combination is 35%. So the personal is the highest because if you have a better device in your house, you put the school one aside and you use your faster with the technology you have. So anything you want to look at, focus, any questions on it? Any areas you want me to go back to or anything?
I think some of the comments in the comments section were very interesting, but it would probably be pretty time consuming to go through that. But
the committee looked at it 2 weeks ago at the comments, and each administrator has access to it, so we've looked at it too, right? And I prefer not to put up there because some of them are personal about a particular student or staff member, and we don't need to do that here. We'll take care of the administrative level. Yeah, but it was pretty insightful. Okay, I'll go back to the all grades survey because that's the one that's. Any questions, Evan?
All right, if there are no questions with that, then we will move on to the recommendation from the planning committee for the upcoming school year.
Once you have a document on your table, the committee met again yesterday. We've been meeting all summer long. You can see the members of the committee. It's basically every department head, the administrators, and we have 5 teachers on the committee. 1 from special ed, 1 from pod 1, 1 from pod 2, a middle school teacher and a high school teacher. What we came up with was 3 models for delivering instruction. Model 1 is 100% in-person instruction, 5 days a week. All students have the ability to attend school daily. Parents selecting for health and safety concerns to keep their child at home will have remote learning available. The district will provide the technology support to the best of our ability. Students in grades 6 through 12 are responsible to connect through our Google Online platform with the class at the regularly scheduled class time. So if you're in 6 through 12 and you're doing remote learning and we're here in person, you're expected to log in and follow along with the class. I don't know, Stephen, you want to talk about how that works at all?
So we're looking to basically have each teacher be live streaming their classroom by just using like a little iPad and like hosting their class in a Google Meet, so that anyone who's connected remotely can still be engaged with what's going on in the classroom, whether it be something on the smartboard or if it's, you know, a lab or something like that, that they'll be able to follow along and interact with the class. Assignments and everything will be posted on Google Classroom. They can still have their documents be peer reviewed by using Google Docs and working at the same time that other students are working on similar documents.
Was that available? Was that being done this last spring?
Everything other than the live stream of classes, because we were all being taught at home. Our Google Classroom was used for, I want to say, most of our school, other than elementary, which is some kinks that we were working out for the upcoming school year.
This is for Model 1.
Mhm.
Right, because
100% in-person instruction.
For the kids that we have
know
to.
someone still won't come to school
Oh.
day because of health.
I
So,
missed that
Right.
step, okay.
so it's first hour.
For those who choose not to come, which is their choice.
Right, they're not coming because of health concerns or other concerns. They're not coming, but it's first hour in math classes going on, that's the class they're enrolled in. They're expected to log in at home and be active with the class through the Google Classroom platform, right?
So
Right, that's for grades 6 through 12. So we're expecting those kids to keep the same schedule remotely. Now, 4K through 5th grade, that's not as easily accomplished because their day, first off, their schedule changes every day depending on their exploratory stuff, and that's harder to keep those kids' attention remotely for that long. So there's different guidelines here on how the teachers will they'll schedule times for them, but it's going to have to be outside their regular class time, and they're going to have to get materials to those students, right? And then additionally, administration will meet with each family requesting remote learning to discuss guidelines and expectations, because it's going to vary depending on the age of the child and what their needs are. Students being educated remotely will not participate or attend any extracurricular or school events in person. If you can't come during the school day, we don't want you coming to a ball game at night or a play or something. That's just, you can't have both ways on that, if that's what you're choosing. Because I don't know how you can do that safely if you can't be in the hallways during the day. The second model is a 50% in person. Students will follow in either group A or group B. And in your board packet, you have a calendar, and the calendar is coordinated green and gold. So A would be green, B would be gold. Basically, A students would come on Mondays and Thursdays. The B students would come on Tuesdays and Fridays, and it'd be almost every other Wednesday. But in the calendar, if you look at it, and when we talk about that, we moved all in-service parent-teacher conferences, all those days to Wednesdays to keep it common, because we wanted to keep our two groups to have the same number of days of in-school. Again, if a student didn't feel comfortable coming to school even 50% of the time, they'd be assigned either an A group or a B group, and that's when they would turn, grades 6 through 12 would connect remotely, and the elementary would have the same thing. Teachers would teach their lessons in a different manner. When they were in there, when they had the kids, they'd give more instruction, and then when they sent them home, they'd send them home with more work because they'd have a day at home to have more time to do homework to come back. And so basically, the teacher would teach the same lesson on Monday and Tuesday because they're seeing Group A on Monday and Group B on Tuesday. But the work time they give them in class, the assignments they give them are going to be heavier on their off day. Model 3 would be if we end up going 100% remotely. We would have a schedule for every class to have a set time when they'd be meeting during out the week. And then the teacher would also have scheduled times for small group and individual virtual meetings as well. We go back to a traditional grading scale, and all remote learning would use our Google online platform. We had a little glitch down in the lower elementaries this spring because those students didn't have, first and second graders didn't have email accounts because it was never needed before, because you wouldn't email a first or second grader. But in order to use the Google, they needed those set up. Stephen now has those set up, and that's way everybody be on the same platform. So it doesn't matter if you got your 4K or your high schooler, you know what platform they're using, so it's easier to have just one system. Masking, social distance, the school district provides 2 masks to every student and staff member. Those have been already ordered. The state's also sending us 1,000 masks. They say they'll be here in 2 weeks. The school district provides a face shield for every staff member. We know a face shield does not replace a mask, but it's another layer of protection for the staff members. Social distancing will be utilized whenever possible. Staff will wear masks. It's strongly recommended and promoted for students to wear a mask. Kind of the same things Dr. Fogarty talked about. Drinking fountains not be available for students, but the water bottle filling stations will still be available, and each student will need to provide their own water bottle. Screening and entry. It was interesting, Dr. Fogarty was back and forth on that because we looked at it and we said all staff will be screened upon arriving at school, and all students will be screened upon entering this building. In the past, we've had student dropout at doors 1 and 19, and then the students on the buses come in 18 and 16. And the system we developed as a staff was have different age groups dropped off at different locations utilizing doors 3, 2, 1, 19, 18, and 16. An oddity with our construction out back, we lost half of our back parking lot. So the town hall has allowed us to park in their back parking lot. They want staff parking there, not students. The church next door has also been nice enough to offer us parking over there for our staff as well. We have 74 spots out back after what's left over after the fence is up and the construction workers park. We typically issue 75 to 80 parking spots for the students, so they'll get an assigned parking spot out back, and then the remaining 5 or so will get front yard parking here. The staff will be assigned who's at the town hall, who's in the north parking lot, and who's in the church parking lot, and we'll have to run a shuttle for those staff members over there. So dropping off, we're also going to have parents come in off of Rip Road, because we know with extra people coming, we're going to barricade the south one. We're going to have everyone come in from Rip Road and snake around the south side of the building, past the front and out the north exit on 257. And that way in the morning when they drop off, they'll go past the doors where they're supposed to drop their students off at. But we're going to screen them, and we have 9 thermometers ordered, and we're going to have the different spots where the grade levels are getting dropped off by the parents dropping them off. And the buses, we're going to have 4K through 5th grade coming in door 18, because they'll go right up the steps then. We're trying to keep our traffic flow moving, so we'd have middle school and high school that ride the bus come in the doors by the elementary gym, the new set of doors, and we'd have a couple screeners there, a couple screeners by the steps coming up, and try and keep the flow of traffic going that way, because we know every kid that comes in door 18 would go up the steps, because all those classrooms are either 2nd or 3rd floor. Sure. And an individual who did have 100.4, we're sending the school nurse, and we're hoping you guys approve the school nurse tonight. But that was our dream. Students or staff displaying COVID-like symptoms, they go to the nurse's office, and then the nurse follows these protocols here. One's from DHS and one's from the Door County Medical Center. Cleaning and disinfecting rooms. Students, if they do cleaning, may only use soap and water to clean. They cannot use any disinfectants or not. That's not allowed. Currently, our custodial staff cleans every room every other night. Well, that's not good enough. So our other staff is going to be trained on how to use cleaning and do cleaning and procedures during the in-service, And then all teachers will wipe down all touched areas within their classroom during the day, after school daily. And then middle school, high school teachers typically have 2 preps a day, and they'll wipe down the areas their students touch one time during their prep time. The high school and middle school students change rooms more often, so a high school teacher sees 80 to 100 kids a day, whereas the elementary, they see their class of 20-some, or they may see their class of 20 and the other their partner's room, they may make 1 switch a day. So they're more of a family unit or whatever. It's a 1 unit compared to high school where they keep being mobile and move around. So we thought that the high school teachers, middle school teachers need to wipe down that room more because of the changing of the students. The elementary classrooms will get wiped down during the day once as well, but it's not going to be with the elementary teacher because the room will be open when those students go to one of their exploratories. And if you're on 3rd floor and you take your students to keyboarding or music or Fayette, that's a long hall, and you have to escort 3rd graders. You can't just send them like a bell for high school. So we'll have to have an aide or a custodian or someone else on staff go in and touch that room once a day. And then after school, everyone's cleaning, and other staff that don't have a classroom will be assigned common areas to clean after school. And we're talking everybody. I mean, the secretaries will wipe down the office, the aides, we're all going to hop in and do this. Lunch program. In all models, we're going to try pre-ordering. We're going to pre-order breakfasts and lunches that may be as simple as first hour when you take attendance, who's taking lunch and breakfast, and get it down to Casey and his staff. That's going to help him with his process of getting the lunches out compared to when they just show up, take a lunch, and punch their number in. It's going to be different. He's going to have them in individual containers, and they're not going to go through the line and serve themselves. It's going to be different. In models 1 and 2, we'll use social distancing. We'll utilize the cafeteria space for some students. We'll use the multi-purpose room, and we'll have to use some classrooms as well because we're going to keep our social distancing, and when you eat, you got to take your mask off, so we're going to spread out and take a little bit more coverage on our teachers' part. That's just the way it is. And then in model 2, I should also tell you, if you're an A student, when you go home, if you order a breakfast or lunch for the next day, or if you're a free and reduced lunch kid, you will have those meals to take home with you so if I'm here on Monday, but I'm not going to be here on Tuesday, I take my Tuesday breakfast and lunch home with me. So they have it for the next day. And if I'm a Monday kid and I'm not coming back till Thursday because it's not my Wednesday, you get 2 days worth of food to cover you. Similar like we did over Easter weekend, how we sent multiple meals home that Monday, Thursday, it's for the long weekend. We'll do the same thing. So our kids will, especially at night, and the ones I worry about are free and reduced lunch kids, but it'll be for anyone who buys lunch or not. And if we go to model 3 where it's remote learning, we'll go back to the meals being delivered in the same manner as we did this spring. Breakfast and meal lunches were provided for each day that school was supposed to be held in session. Transportation, like I said earlier, bus drivers everyone's important, but they're really essential at this point. Busing has to be provided for all residential students. That's state law, and that has not changed. Open enrollment students may still ride the bus as long as they're at a designated stop within the district. That law hasn't changed. Social distancing on a bus will not be possible in models 1 or 2. If we're at 50%, unless we really have a great number of but we're still going to have when Rock schedules the buses and loads up the kids on the buses when he does the schedule, there's 71 spaces on a bus, and he puts 80 to 90 students on that bus because we know a certain percentage are going to drive their own car and their parents are going to drive them, so he can overbook them that way. We have 9 bus routes, 8 regular routes, and then 1 special education route. So they're going to wear masks on the bus, and all students will have an assigned seat on the bus. They're in the same proximity to the same people every day. Student drop off and pick off. I kind of went off on a tangent earlier and kind of went through all that. I don't know. And those are the recommendations from the 15-person committee. Then administration kind of looked at it, and Melissa Margraf had a really good idea this morning. We fleshed it out this afternoon. Her idea is number 2, but number 1 was, as an administrative team, we feel if we're going to have the teachers cleaning rooms and doing extra duties and watching more kids at lunchtime, they're not always going to get their time. And if they're teaching in person and they have some students remote they got to connect with, we're putting more and more on their plate. They're going to need time to do those extra tasks. So administratively, we're recommending a 2:30 dismissal time. That gives them time to wipe down those rooms, clean it out, and get a hold of those students that they have remotely, because this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. So if we don't take care of them in the beginning, they can do it for 2 weeks, they can't do it for 9 months. So we've got to give them the flexibility of having some more time to take care of these tasks. And it takes away from educational minutes, I understand that, but we got to take care of safety first and then education.
Would we have to add days or anything if we
At
did those
this,
times?
at this point, we don't know, because DPI hasn't waived off the hours of instruction, which is 1,137. I have to believe that DPI is going to have to do something, because if you're a 50-50 model, students only are half the days anyways. And some school in Wisconsin got shut down at this point in some years, so we're going to miss some. The word from DPI is there's nothing legally that's changed the requirement for the year. They said plan your year and figure it out, and we'll get to it later. And that's pretty much from the Deputy State Superintendent. He said you got to do what you got to do to plan for the year, and we'll worry about that stuff later.
The current dismissal time is what?
What?
What's the current dismissal time?
3:12 for students. Yeah. And really, it's 3:12, but the elementary students start loading the buses a little bit earlier than that. Yeah, so it's about 42 minutes. And class time in the high school is 45 minutes, is it? Yeah, so we're looking at reducing a little bit. But there's no way we'll make it till May if we don't do something and some relief on that. Any other questions on that, number 1? Number 2 is Melissa's idea of, all right, here comes August 24th and we have 600 kids here. What happens if we find that we're overwhelmed or we're not capable to handle capacity? So the recommendation from our admin meeting this afternoon is that we utilize Model 2 to start the year for the first 2 weeks, and then we evaluate and judge how the operations are going, and then we make adjustments from there if need be to our practices and our procedures, because everything we have written down we think is going to work, it's not going to go 100% smooth until we actually run it. So we'd like to do it like a business or a restaurant has a soft opening. We'd like to open at 50% for 2 weeks, and we'd like to walk before we run.
Is 2 weeks enough time to do a soft opening?
What?
Is 2 weeks enough time to do a soft opening?
We'd like to start with that, and we think after 6 or 8 days, we could probably have a pretty good idea. I mean, every year, the first day of school, there's always something that pops up that you weren't ready for, right? I mean, there's always a curveball thrown, and you figure it out, but that's under normal conditions. I think after 2 weeks, we'll know where we're at. Also, what we're asking tonight, it's July 16th. We're 5 weeks away from school starting. If you think where Door County was 5 weeks ago to where it is now, we don't know where we're going to be in 5 weeks. So you can say, yeah, we're going 5 days a week after 2 weeks, which would be the day after Labor Day. You know, start school August 24th, go 50% for 2 weeks, and then we roll it out. But our parents and families need to know that at any time, we may be switching from here at 100% to remote to, I mean, we'll give them ample warning, or as much warning as we can, but this is going to be a fluid operation because we don't know. As conditions change, we've got to adapt and figure it out. So we do have 3 models ready to go. We even had discussion, do we need the Model 2 after the first 2 weeks? Will we ever go back there? And we said, we better hang on to it in case we do need it. We don't know. You know, February is always the longest, shortest month of the school year, you know, so what's it going to be like? And you heard Dr. Boger say, hey, plan is for 2 years. So we'd like to do Yeah, that's what our recommendation is, so. And I know whatever you approve tonight, it's gonna change, and when we change, the school board won't have time to set a meeting, come in and make the decision and go. That's gonna have to be us administrators saying, kinda like a snow day, you know, or we're going, you know, I mean, it's all. Not that I want that responsibility, I'm not looking for that. I'm gonna pass it off to those three. No, I mean, we're gonna work on it as a team, but it's just, it's too fluid to not, you know.
So,
So
yeah,
how would the school board like to discuss this? Do you want to see if we have common ground on their recommendation and then discuss finer points, or how do you want to proceed?
well, can we just ask some questions? Is that okay?
Yeah, because
Or is
I
that
mean,
not
it's
answering a
already
perceived
down.
question? I mean,
We've been,
If you just want to ask questions, that's great. I'm asking, how do you want to proceed? So just go ahead with your questions.
okay. Well, my one comment, I think 2 weeks off start seems reasonable. I do think 2 weeks, they'll get this figured out pretty quick, it's gonna work or not. I think the other thing you said is, and I mentioned this on the way in, is all this planning that you guys have been doing, first of all, is awesome, and thank you very much. It's not gonna end for 2 years. So if you think we're making a decision and that's the answer, you just said it. Mile 2, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, 5, and 6 will be developed at some point from experience, right? So I just think as long as you recognize we're gonna start this thing, we're evaluating risk regularly, it's not a one and done and off we go. So, and you already said that, I'm just echoing the importance of that. A couple things, I think we had 91% of our parents that want to come back to school, full-time. So I think it is very reasonable for us to start sending out proper communication that we expect personal responsibility, as the doctor mentioned. So check your kids regularly. If they're sick, don't send them. I mean, that's kind of a school understanding, but I think I recommend we actually communicate it, send it out, and say, if you want to keep us in school, please do this. Okay, right?
the information she was talking about having on a sticker or magnet, we're putting in the registration packets that go off next Tuesday, is it? Maybe it's Wednesday, I don't know what day they're going on. It's next week.
Detailed
So, yeah,
comment?
we are gonna keep on that.
If we do temperatures, have you talked about doing a temperature right in the car? And if they don't pass, send them home with the parent. Because she makes a valid point. So we have a clean room somewhere, that separate in this room, that we're gonna start taking all these kids to the nurse, and then she has a big enough facility. If we hit a February and we have 20 kids, could happen. This last February, we had more than 20 probably, right? For flu, but I mean, so I'm just.
Hopefully if they have a fever, they stay home. But yeah, we will catch them at the door. But then Dr. Kroger was back and forth on whether that's worth it or not. We as a staff, the committee, but we could at least start with that and try it and see if we can. I mean, we don't know how much time it'll take to get 600 kids in 6 doors, but, and we know everyone's not gonna get dropped off at the same time. Buses kind of stagger in a little bit, and they're gonna come in and we're gonna try to do our best.
For consideration, one of the plants I was working in had three people at every stage at shift change, because it's a lot of people. So I'm just, if you're thinking to have one person there, you're gonna get overrun by students.
Well, what we were thinking is, and I didn't write everything down in the plan, so I can't write everything down there. But like, students, we don't want them milling around the hallways, so we're gonna reduce the time parents can drop off in the morning, and we're not gonna have parents in the lobby after school, obviously. So we're gonna have more folks getting students in and out. We want the students going right to their first hour class or their homeroom if they're in elementary. Those teachers obviously have to be in those spots, but then it's the staff that's doesn't have a homeroom or a first hour class, you have prep. You're gonna be helping us at one of these stations because we have so many spots we're having kids come in the building, right?
I'm sorry, one more. Have you guys talked about some of these plexiglass dividers? Would we invest in something like that for classrooms for teachers' desks? Based on your last comment on transportation, you get some smart people, could we put a plexiglass area around the driver but still has quick access for an emergency? And if his fan's running, he's gonna be blowing all the stuff out of that area.
The drivers, if you put plexiglass behind the driver, you gotta leave the next 2 seats open because you can't have a student that close to plexiglass on a vehicle that transports students. So, no, so for the drivers.
So you looked into it?
So the drivers, we're looking at masks and the
Shield?
shield, yeah, thank you.
Is that a
As far as the, what?
Is that a pre-COVID rule?
Pre-COVID?
Rule of the plexiglass?
Yes. with
I don't,
the-
I'm not 100% on
I
the
would be
transportation
surprised
rules,
if they
but-
don't revisit that rule.
Well, that's kind of like the number of hours in the school.
Right, I
Maybe
know
we-
Rock checked with the DOT if what the regulations are today, and the regulations say you can't do that, but the plastic mask, or the plastic shield is allowed by DOT standards. He has contacted DOT about that. The plexiglass in classrooms, we have ordered some. If you go in our K-12 office downstairs, you'll see the secretaries already have it at their desks. We're looking at where they work with small groups where it's important to see a person's mouth, like our speech pathologist or our ELL teachers. Yeah, the plexiglass, we have that already for them. We're obviously going to probably be ordering more. I can't guarantee delivery on any of that stuff though, because it is, everybody's reaching out
Every
for it.
school,
So, yeah, so it's a supply and demand item right now, but we are working on getting what we can. We have some, but not probably as much as we'd like. I just saw a design for a desk today that has, or a table that is kidney shaped and there's 5 dividers. So I'm sure some teachers in the elementary classroom would love to have those.
Hadco has made, Hadco can
That's
produce
what we
those.
saw, right? Yep.
One last thing is, I would recommend that maybe initially you're having your staff check their temperatures. But I personally trust our staff, and if one of them doesn't have a temperature gauge at home, have them get one, and they should monitor themselves. I mean, that's just, so then you can focus on the kids.
But our committee's gonna get back again next Wednesday. And
Just a consideration.
We're gonna keep working on this, but tell us what you guys wanna approve and not approve, it's fine. It's up to you guys, but we're running with it.
Some questions on the cleaning and disinfecting. Was there any discussion in the committee about spraying classrooms? I know some of the schools with younger children are using spraying equipment. Dr. Fogarty talked about kids touching everything. Was that discussed at all? And then was the HVAC system and the quality of our ventilation, was that discussed at all? I mean, are we good there? I know that's also a factor.
Our HVAC system is up to code for each area of the building. The 1924 codes are different than 1965, but they are up to code, and it's as good as you're gonna get for the conditions we have. The sprays that have to sit, some of them have, it depends which you use, some have to sit for 10 minutes and just sit. Others are, there's a new Lysol, but I don't know if it's 100% approved yet, but they say it's 2 minutes. Getting it just came out, and getting the supplies is gonna be tough, but yeah, we've discussed that. TTX has a system they use, it's a fogger type system, and our custodians are trying to get in contact over there to figure out what that is. But yeah, we looked at it. We've also talked to an outside source if we would have a COVID case of having a deep clean from a third party come in. That's 2 items. One, it's $15,000 per time, and they shut down the building for 2 to 3 days. And the companies we've been in contact with aren't sure they have the staffing ability to come in and do that. But yeah, we're working on all those cleaning issues, absolutely.
The other question I had was the mental health component to all this, and I know, Melissa, that's your area, and I'm sure you're working on that, and how Melissa Andrews' program fits into all of that, and we heard Dr. Fogarty again say the serious suicide situation she's seeing, and children with eating difficulties one way or the other. I suspect there's going to be a lot of stress. Certainly families are stressed, and I think that's got to be a very key component that we're assessing this, that our staff is trained to at least refer people for assistance. So I think that's got to be a key component of any of these models.
Can
I took Dr. Fogarty's comments on that though, related to, because kids aren't in school in their routine day-to-day operations, that's occurring. It's not because of the it's not because of the whole COVID issue. It's
Right.
because how we've screwed up everybody's routine.
But they haven't been in school, so there's anxiety there, there's stress there. there's stress in families, and we don't know if they're gonna be in school. We hope they will, but we don't know that.
Well, that is one reason I would highly recommend we take every reasonable mitigation for risk, get these kids in school. Because I personally don't think we're doing our kids any favors by not getting them in school. Remote learning doesn't work. We can pretend it does. It works for 5%. And I think it's a disservice to our kids. I get the threats, I get the risks, I care about it too. We're gonna take the precautions. And, we haven't talked budget yet, but I mean, we need to have these kids in school. It's better for them, We'll be the first society, putting kids last instead of first. I know there's risk to teachers. I respect all teachers. You know that my wife is one of them, 4K in fact. So it's a challenge everywhere. But when we're doing this soft start, I mean, and even if there's a way to limit the soft start. Now, I get it. If we get it, if things change every week, the planning cycle, right? All of a sudden, numbers triple. We get them in our classrooms. I get it. Everything's going to change. But I'm just saying, the underlying comment I need to make is, I personally believe that we need to focus on our kids like we've been doing forever. And I respect staff members greatly, but we all take risks. And we also, you get in your car, you get in a plane, those are all risks. You go on vacation, those are risks, okay? So, and every week we learn something new. And so that's why the planning cycle is keeping going, but I would not leave this meeting without saying, if our kids are important, we gotta keep them in school. And I think that's what the doctor, to my pleasure, has said in a very eloquently, far better educated method than I did. So I just wanted to support that. But all these other measures, I got it. Masks, yeah, that's shields, plexiglass, break a law and put a plexiglass on a bus. I'd be willing to talk to a cop, say, hey, all right, police officer, because they're awesome, and we'd probably be all right. But, because I also respect greatly our bus drivers who pick up my kids and all that kind of stuff, so.
Melissa, did you want to address what Sue was asking?
Yeah, just something that, we absolutely agree with that. And as an administrative team, when we talked about the possibility of a soft start opening, also, if you have your smaller groups of kids together, you can do some of that social, emotional teaching and lessons, and you have more time, and it's intentional, instead of the beginning of school when everything is just off to the races and we're trying to get everything done. So if we slow down, we have the opportunity to see if logistically what we're doing and what we have placed, if it works. And if it doesn't work, how we fix it. But then also we have these key opportunities to bring in our family groups of students and talk to them and find out how they are and able to monitor them. So I just wanted to say that was another point why why we feel that this is a pretty a good way to start the school year, at least for 2 weeks.
Go ahead.
Okay, I would agree, and I think the main factor here is the calming effect, that we don't create a air of hysteria. And I think, the temperature testing may be good, but I think trying to stop every student that's coming into the school and take a temperature and bunching them up again and creating all these log jams and that sort of thing. And I think, the idea of keeping these groups together, getting them into the classroom as soon as possible, getting them distanced, and then dealing with, the situation, I think is, keeps children calm and doesn't create this whole era that's on the media right now, the mass hysteria. And children feel, more secure and able to deal with it that way. The whole surface sterilization thing, I think, is way overblown. You deal with the source. You have children wash their hands. You get a mindset. You wash your hands. Soap and water. Alcohol is a desiccant, and everybody knows it. And, you eliminate those germs at the source, and you don't want to be spraying everything down with 78% alcohol to try and do a surface sterilization if you can eliminate that source with people coming in, the staff, and that sort of thing. I'm all in favor of the 5-day-a-week start and doing it as organized as possible. I agree that live streaming is possible in some households, but very difficult given our internet capabilities and back and forth the type of working relationship with a teacher. So I personally am in favor of the 5-day a week, and I think we try to institute it as smoothly as possible.
Jerry?
Yeah, going down the list, I agree with you 100%. I would change it, is strongly recommended and promoted for students to wear masks. I would say it is required before any student enters into a bus or enters into the building, that they have to have a mask in place. I never thought of what you identified, which I think is what will happen if it makes it voluntary. Certain kids will wear them and make fun of the kids. I mean, the kids who don't wear them will make fun of the kids who wear them. And I think it's becoming apparent across the country that wearing a mask seems to be a really important part of this. I do have a question that each kid will provide their own water bottle. I can see kids forgetting their water bottles and exchanging water bottles, and here we are back to that. I understand they're closing drinking fountains, so you're going to have water bottle filling stations, but can you then put in Dixie cup dispensers?
But Jerry, currently in every level of the building, we have their combination drinking fountain, water filling, bottle filling stations, and we will make sure the kids have water bottles that don't have one. We just don't want to buy 500, 600 red ones, and then how,
I'm just saying the kids are going to say, oh, I forgot my water bottle. Johnny, can I borrow yours?
Mr. Hill's already got an idea on that,
Okay.
that he runs past admin team, yeah.
Based upon what Amy said, I would drop all the screening of coming into the school. It's nice to do it in September, October, when there's a blizzard out there in January and everybody's lined up out there waiting to get their temperature. They'll probably have a temperature, or they'll have an abnormal temperature negatively. And I think it just adds more to the confusion, to the unnaturalness, and if a hospital drops doing that, they have more at-risk people than the school's going to have. I would say I would certainly recommend doing it. I raised a question, and I don't know, I'm not an expert in this, but I do know that bacteria and viruses in UV lighting do not get along well. And I don't know if there's anybody looked at installing in some classrooms at
It's the
night.
intensity of the UV light that you have to have to effectively kill the virus.
So it's probably like so much that you're going to get suntan walking in.
It's
a good idea.
Limit of causing dermal.
Thank you. Again, at first I was the idea of doing Model 2 for a while, for a couple of weeks. I didn't say, oh my God, we don't want to do that. But after I thought about it, I think that's probably an excellent idea. So you're going to be able to crawl before you walk. It gives you time to really, in a non-chaotic way, kind of go into the next stage. So I would agree with that. Another administrative recommendation, number 3, and that is after this is started, you better begin to plan what you're going to do when the real flu hits, starting in November or March, or December, because that's going to become the symptoms of the real flu are going to be identical to those of COVID, and you're probably all going to go crazy. Also, the 4th recommendation I would have is that you have the ability to make changes to this on your own, because you're going to make a lot of changes. This is not going to go. No plans like this ever go as they have been put on paper, and you're going to see, oh my God, and some expletive moments, probably within the first few hours, and you're going to have to be able to make. And I think the board has to authorize it. You can go beyond this document and make changes on the run based upon what's best for the kids and the staff and everybody here. And that's just an understanding.
Well, periodically I do anyways, and I just call you guys later. I mean, that's how things are anyway. When it hits the fan, I don't have time to tell you, hey, if the fan, I gotta call you after hours, you know?
They're here, the administrators are here, they're experiencing it.
So anyway,
We've discussed
need the
this
power
every
to
day
make
all
a quick
summer long.
change.
this is a really good plan, and congratulations to all of you.
I want to hear from everyone. So Keith?
I just wanted to say, I mean, I'm in all favor of getting school back to normal. I don't know what normal is, but I respect the administrative team's decision if they want to ease into it and do a trial run. I like that idea that we're getting some in school learning as well as some remote. Hopefully, after the 2 weeks, we can iron out everything, and hopefully we're in a happy place and we can resume full-time all the time. As far as the temperature checks, I'm not sure the effectiveness of that is. I think maybe a better model would be to stress with parents. I mean, if your kids are sick, keep them home. I mean, it's not rocket science. If your kid wakes up, if they have a fever, you keep them home. I mean, you do that now before COVID. I mean, if they're sick, you stay home. Staff, they are adults. They should know if they wake up with a fever, they stay home. The masks, I think if we're making them mandatory on the school bus, they should be mandatory with whatever small exception that would not fill. But I think for the 99% of students that are capable, I think that should be, if everyone's doing it, it's a cool thing to do. If some kids aren't doing it, then it's not cool anymore, so.
But I mean, in 100% model or 50%, if you're not wearing a mask, you can do remote learning.
Right, but I mean, the verbiage in here said that.
Right, I
it will be
understand
the-
that.
But I like.
I've heard from a few that we're going to
I think that
require.
would do more justice to the mitigation of the spread than the temperature checks. I mean, I just can't see that. I think this is well done. I mean, I applaud the team that, took the time to do this and the time we all put into it. I think it's well done, and that's just my only.
Lisa?
Cindy?
No, go ahead.
Oh.
Go ahead, no, when you're done, I have a comment or a question.
Okay.
Go ahead, Cindy.
My voice is in this document here, and I just want to start by thanking those that acknowledge the committee work, because these teachers and administrative staff, I mean, this was really intense. And they dissected it and took it apart, and we collectively came up with these recommendations, and it's very heartfelt. So I just want to, there's just a couple things that came out of the committee that I was really impressed with, the thoughtfulness around this. We're really at a time where we have to, I take this off. We're at a time where we have to, we're changing the culture of how we deliver services to children. And so we talked a lot about the need for really like a value statement that really gets instilled in these children as well as the parents. That when you talk about making sure that the parents do the testing at home before they send their kids, or checking your kids daily and reviewing their rituals and routines around wearing a mask and social distancing. And I can't really remember which committee member came up with this, but I know, Erin, you can really probably be the best person to echo it, but or tell folks about this. But we talked about preparing a homemade video, which I just think is a classic, using our own students, our own teachers and parents around everything from how to appropriately wash your hands to why we wear a mask, and kind of dispelling myths and stereotypes around the mask, so it really is, again, a part of our culture. And I really like that. And I don't know if you want to say anything a little bit more about that.
No, and I would have to actually give credit to Joel. Joel's the one who had suggested that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good idea. He talked about his own daughter's experience trying to do something at the Y in Green Bay. And they had sent out a video to all families about the procedures that they were going to have to follow when they came into the building, so that when they arrived, they already knew what that was going to be like. I think that's important for our families to see in advance, so the first time that they're hearing about it isn't from their child when they come home, that they know in advance kind of what our expectations are going to be.
So, and my voices and stuff, so I don't belabor it, but I thought that was just one more creative idea that came out of this committee to truly help the kids not be afraid to come to school, feel good about the new way that they're going to be taught. It was just very
And I think for the parents as well, to feel comfortable.
Someone sent me a video today of 2 administrators walking through the school, telling people everything from what's going to happen when you pull up at the door and enter the school and walk to your classroom and go to lunch, and so it's a great idea. Dave?
When everyone spoke, I have one more comment to squeeze in.
Sue, did you have anything else?
No, thank you.
Just a consideration, because I will voice that I am supportive of the 5-day-a-week thing. We've already talked about the teaching hours, not so critical this year. So I'm just saying, have you talked about another idea for a soft start? And hear me out, is bring all the kids in. But the amount of teaching that happens the first couple weeks ain't on the books. I mean, you might do a lot, but you might stop a lot. You might be doing a lot of education and talking about what happened this summer where everyone had to do masks at Walmart or not. And the reason is you're going to have 2 starts. If you do the soft start like you're proposing, that if we get to 2 weeks, you're going to have to redo the startup because it's a whole new schedule. Versus if you get the kid, like the 4K thing, right? If you get the kids on the schedule, and maybe we think about asking, there might be some parents that were willing enough to take that risk to help that chaos in the first period of time. Because then what you've done is you can do a soft start educationally, but let's get the kids in there, get them in the routine, and do all this training, right? So the first week is training about washing your hands, don't touch anybody, keep a mask on, why the mask matters. There's going to be a lot of discussion about all the stuff about masks and what CDC says, what the test says, and what this mask says, and OSHA says it doesn't solve COVID, right? So those discussions will probably happen. So it's just a discussion because I go back to 90% of our teachers, families, want their kids in 5-day-a-week thing. So I'm you know, if it plays out, we do the 2 week soft start. You know, that was reasonable. But just another, had you talked about that? Or is there a way, because by the way, I'm sure for the admin team, periodically throughout the month, you know, education may fall to the second priority. Because you might be talking about what's going on and what the numbers mean and how this works, and that's okay for this year.
And if I could answer, oftentimes the first few days of school anyway are all about procedures and those kinds of things. I think having the smaller groups is going to give you the advantage of focusing less on behaviors that might be going on in the classroom, those kind of things. And there's going to be so many new procedures that I really think having those extra days with the smaller groups will be a huge advantage to be able to do that.
So have, if you went with the soft, if we go with the soft start and somehow getting back to full time, have you thought about stepping that? Like, it's probably easier to bring high school, middle school back full time than the lowest grades?
But the educational value is just the opposite.
We had that discussion today. Of
High schoolers are more capable of attempting remote learning than your elementary and young kids.
They don't want to do remote learning though, they want to be.
I know, but your young kids are not getting any value from remote learning.
Yeah, I was going to say.
No, they're not.
I was going to say, I would bring, if you really bring anybody back full-time, I'd bring, I can't imagine first day of first grader on remote, you know, but
I don't think anybody's getting anything
Can I
out
tell you a
of
little
remote
discussion we
learning.
had? We did discuss maybe bringing back certain grade levels. You do that, you do multiple things. First off, it's different than any of the models we have, so it's totally different. You're dividing up families as well, like by doing that. Because and you overload one area and the other area is empty, no matter what grade level you pick with, so you're not finding out what the whole system can do. If we can have some in all areas, we can see how the whole system is working. But if you only have first grade and 10th graders, well, that doesn't do any good for the middle school, or vice versa. And we don't want, and we definitely don't want to split up families.
And I'm not talking about doing a step.
No, I know.
I'm not talking about bringing them back step. I'm talking if you go the soft start, okay, after 2 weeks, we think the high school can handle coming back full-time 5 days a week. But we don't think 4K through second grade can handle that, so we're gonna keep them.
That's all things we're going to monitor in those first 2 weeks and get a handle of it and gauge where we're at.
What about internet for the 20% of the families that don't have it? Is there anything we can do for them?
Absolutely. We're looking at purchasing hotspots. Steven, can you tell more about, we still will miss somebody, right?
We'll miss some because most hotspots use cell data. So there's going to be certain parts of the county that just cell data is awful. So hopefully we don't have many in that section, but yeah, we'll be looking like a lot of other school districts where we'll have hotspots that students can like rent or, well, not rent, but borrow from the library. And then that kids that are working from home that have no issue, they'll just be borrowing it for an extended time.
And that's where in the plan where it said those that choose remote learning, means of administration, that's one of the questions that dealt with them is, okay, what's your internet like? And get that to those families that do need it. Talk about the other equipment you've ordered already.
So we got Chromebooks early on. One of the biggest issues we have right now are webcams, Chromebooks, all of that. All of those factories are in China. So where we started dealing with this in March, all of those have been shut down since December and January. We are lucky enough to get an order in, so we got extra Chromebooks. So 6 through 12 will have a device, and then we can redistribute our like MacBook cards so that the devices that we borrowed from kindergarten and second grade, they'll still have access to some sort of computer devices for the kids that are in the building. We're looking at we just ordered little iPads that we have set up with stands so that teachers can live stream in a Google Meet for the kids that aren't there.
Those iPads, last time teachers received those was 2013.
Right, so this was kind of a twofer because yeah, we haven't refreshed our iPads. We've refreshed all of our staff computers over the past 2 years. So this is, okay, we're gonna refresh with iPads this year. So everyone will have one and we'll be all on the same platform with it. It's kind of the fun part. Starting fresh with all of those is that I'll be able to all incorporate them in a MDM, a mobile device management. So I'll be able to have every single iPad on the same layout and that we can remotely add or remove apps on the fly. So if a teacher needs something, everyone will be on the same playing field.
We've already spent half the budget for the year.
Yes.
So you're obviously comfortable that an iPad is a good for streaming?
Yes. Basically, everyone always goes with, why didn't you set up a computer in the back of the webcam and use like an external microphone? The issue with that is every single teacher has a different type of computer set up. So everyone's going to have something different because some have older MacBooks, some have Windows computers. There'll be different compatibility issues with that. So this way we're all on the same page. And also with it being small enough and with a stand, teachers can set it up. Because the one thing, yeah, we can have something set up in the back. Kids at home aren't going to be able to see what's on the smartboard. This way we can move it, especially if there's a lab setting, teacher can set it up right there. This is what we're going to do. We did microphone tests. Microphone seems pretty good with that.
The microphone would be the concern, I think.
Right. And that's a nice part about it being small and being movable. Because some districts, they're looking at like lapel mics, and those come with their same issues, either interference or they like to just chug batteries. So we felt like this was probably an expensive upfront solution, but probably the best all-around solution.
And is this stand a table stand or a freestanding thing that can put?
Basically it's a cover that can flip and set itself up, prop against it. If we need something a little more steady, we do have a bunch of these extra. They're basically like textbook, like for typing class with a typing textbook. Those work as a really good stand as well.
So what about?
One critical factor in remote learning is the home environment. And reading through the comments, it was, yes, we can do, if the whole family is involved in it or a parent is there during the remote learning experience, multiple children trying to remote learn in the same household, you know, all those things are really critical in the household that we don't necessarily have control over. And I think that's always a consideration about them.
So we have parochial school kids that ride our buses. And whatever we decide about masks will be communicated to them. They'll have to follow the
If they're on our
same,
bus.
they follow the same rules. And I don't know if we have any from north and south, but if you split this, you know, the A group is north and the B group is south.
That's not how we're doing it.
That's not how you're doing it,
No.
okay.
That comes down to the bus drivers. They run their route, and students, Adam, Aaron, and Melissa are going to divide the students into A and B group, and they're going to try and balance it out by grade level, by special ed, by ELL, the best we can, the busing. So we run the regular route, and so they're going to try and divide it out equally, the best possible, without splitting any families up. So we talked about north and south in the beginning, and then the bus drivers would have south route, a north route, and then they'd have their regular route if we were 100%. So we're going to have them learn 3 things, and that bus can go by. It was just a lot better to do it with one, just keeping routes as is, and then working from those bus lists to divide into A and B groups based on, and it's not going to be 100% 50-50 split. Third grade may be 60-40, and fourth grade might be 45-55. It's not going to be exactly perfect, but everybody in the building has different needs with the EL students we have in special education, the other 504 students. So we're trying to balance it as best we can. So it'll be around 300 each. It's not going to be exactly perfect, and we're not splitting families up.
And hopefully it's a truly temporary thing, and after 2 weeks it'll be
So
5 days a week.
Well, then we'll
I'm in favor,
Get back to it
I
and
am
something
personally
wrong.
in favor of the soft start and starting with as many safety protocols in place as possible, and that includes requiring masks. But I don't know, the temperature checks I think are just gonna create havoc in the morning, and rely on the staff to use their good judgment.
I think the other thing, but you probably talked about this, in time, you'll start to figure this out, and most likely your staff, as qualified as the ones that I know, you're gonna start picking up a kid who needs to get a temperature check, right?
They know who's sick. in the
Right,
classroom.
exactly.
So we're trying to stop them from coming in the door.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you know.
But I mean, that where you could even have, maybe some of that screening is visual screening. But I do think if you're checking the temperature on every single one, even with a click, bing, I got it, click, bing, I mean, it's awesome, but it's gonna bottleneck and winter will be awesome. So that's why I really think.
I think I've heard from the majority of the board that says the screening is the part we should drop out of this, but I know we also want to change the word to encourage masking to required masking, correct? That's the 2 themes I've heard.
And the other thing, if there's no reason to get all the kids in classrooms, then check their temperatures. Like, sit down, I'm gonna check your temperatures. It's more orderly, you get them all in there, and when they're taking attendance, everyone sits an extra 5 minutes to do that. So
That's great, Dave, but we've been able to order 9 thermometers that aren't here yet. If we have one for every classroom, that's about a bazillion. Right, that's 55 or 60. I mean, I don't know where we're gonna get these thermometers. And right now, it's supply and demand is our problem.
Well, I just got one, I didn't know they're that hard to get. That's
Yeah,
all.
well, that's what we're waiting patiently for what we ordered.
And I read this somewhere place, but kids 15 and under, the vast majority of them are asymptomatic. You're not gonna pick up a temperature on that.
Yeah, one of the pieces of information that Dr. Fogarty shared that our committee didn't have was that that's not a
Good indicator.
initial sign of COVID is temperature. I don't think we knew that. So.
Can I add something too? I think too, when we didn't say or come to recommending that masks be required, we felt compelled that we needed to do something to identify or be able to screen if we weren't going to use that language. So I think that's one of the reasons why temperature check was like, well, what can we do? You know, as a proactive measure.
Carl, did you have something you wanted to say?
I was on a Skype meeting with all of the business managers from Northeast Wisconsin, and we were talking about this, and one of the things that was brought up was the live streaming of classroom. And we have a list of parents that have said they do not want their kids' pictures shown or anything like that on the site.
Yeah, we've already discussed that, yeah.
So, but it's like you have to make sure that those kids' pictures are not on the live stream because it could be out there for anybody.
We're okay there. Our meets are internal only. So only staff and students with an @sevastopolschool.com email address can view them. Also, we
Right,
had,
but anybody can hack into anything.
but also at that, we have a third-party opt-out for student information, which for a while parents construed that as also for like Facebook and things like that. We've since clarified that it's kind of, for you're here, it can be used sort of thing. And with that, even last year, we had one student that fell into that category, and that was only because of a foster situation. To my current knowledge, I don't believe we have any that fit.
Good.
But yes, it's a definite consideration we have discussed as a group.
So I think probably the one biggest question remaining is how the board feels about these three options. So a straw poll, this is not a vote, it's not binding, it's just a straw poll to give these people some direction. In favor of one? In favor of,
I'm kind
I don't
of-
know where that is.
I'm 1 and 2, or I respect the A-team's decision, but I mean, I would love to see Model 1, but I'm gonna vote.
2? So,
2 with the soft opening,
with the
with the soft opening, yes.
I could be swayed to 1 though.
So, I don't know
Two
if
is
that
the
helps you or
soft,
not.
two would be, 2 is the
Two
soft
is the
opening.
soft
Yeah.
opening, right, right.
You're saying 1 with a soft.
We're gonna have to be flexible on this throughout the year. I see us bouncing between 1 and 3, because I don't know how the building could be, the soft opening, it's nice to have 50/50, but then either our building's safe or it's not, Either our facilities to go or not, I'm thinking.
That's why I like 1, but if you guys, as an A-team, think that you need time to get things, the bugs worked out, the new system,
Well,
I respect that. And
But in secondary, the students' needs is our staff, except for the committee members, are still, I give them a weekly update and the progress we're making, but they're anxious to find out what the conditions of work are as well, so a 2-week easing in for them, because we haven't seen some of them for months, it's been unique.
for the straw poll, was it number 2 for a long term, or, can we clarify that? Or is it
I think
number 1 with a soft start, or?
For me, number 2 was the soft opening.
Oh.
Cindy, you said number 2.
Soft opening.
Soft
Well,
opening, so you
yeah,
said soft.
so
Well, I'm
I'm
just wondering, are we voting for 2 weeks then, or?
just to
not
clarify
the first
Dave's
semester?
comment.
I think, to me, we let them judge what they need to make school run.
Soft opening with eventually, hopefully going to
Hopefully
100%.
That's the
I
goal.
think we all want 1, but we're okay with the 2-week grace period, and then hopefully everything is in line with moving towards number 1. I think everybody wants kids in school, right?
Right, that'll be 7 weeks out, we'll find out where we are in 7 weeks, right?
Well, and I think that's the caveat, we don't know. We want all this, but what's going to happen in the next 5 weeks? Or
But that's our goal,
in 2
is
or
to
3
get to
months. So
100%.
we have to be prepared to be nimble and shift back and forth if needed.
Parents want some continuity too, though. When you read, again, I'll just say, when you read through the comments, parents want some continuity, that if they're both working, they don't want to leave their children home alone. So I think that's a big consideration.
Yeah, I'm confused now. I thought we were kind of focusing on Model 2 for a couple weeks to get things going, and then we swing into Model 1 after 2 weeks.
Right.
I wouldn't want to say Model 2 we start, and then later on we'll determine when we go into Model 1. But, I think parents need a definite,
Yeah, they need, you just can't.
say, sometime in the future, we're going to go,
Well, basically, we're looking at 50% until Labor Day, and then after Labor Day, we're 100% in school. Everyone knowing conditions change in life, but if that would be that's our goal. Plan for now.
I'm kind of curious, what would be the the difference in staff preparation. Because we said if we went to the Model 2, they're going to teach longer blocks with homework versus if we went one. So I'm asking the question with this in mind is it easier to prepare for 5 days a week and then shift to this one for the staff, or is it easier to shift? So that what I'd like to tell my staff to do, which isn't my staff, it's your staff, but if it was my choice, I'd say prepare for the worst scenario academically. Get all your curriculum ready, you got a few weeks or whatever it is, prepare for this one. If we kick back to the other one because 7 weeks, everything changes, they have the work done, the homework done to lesser pain to shuffle to the other one. Has that been discussed? And because my theory is the 5 day a week would be a better baseline for curriculum planning, and then you kick back and then you're teaching, basically you probably take 2 lessons for day 1 and repeat those next 2 lessons. And I can be 100% wrong because I'm not a teacher, as we know. I'm just saying.
Model 1, the extra layer in Model 1 is those students that are still remotely out there. So, you know what I mean? Compared to a regular school year, you teach your load, great, wonderful, everyone's in front of you. In Model 1, with 100% in attendance, we know it's not 100% because someone's at home, so the teacher's got that extra layer of connecting with those kids at home. Model 2 is, in my mind, is easier because I'm going to teach the same lessons on day 2 as I taught on day 1, so I don't have as much prep for day 2 because I've already done that. But I'm going to teach from bell to bell. I'm not going to give them work time in my classroom like I maybe would if they were there 5 days a week. I'm going to say, no, I'm going to teach for 45 minutes, and you're going to get loaded up with homework for the day you're not with me, but I have less lessons to prep for because I only have half the students there, so the next day I'm going to flip it and do the other group.
So that's why, so we'll give them, they'll get 2 weeks of a...
But no matter what model we're in, there's going to be remote learning because there's always those kids that never attend. Right.
So how do you work testing then? I mean, do you give a test to the in-house group, and then you have to give the same test to the next group that comes in? Do you spend 2 days on the same test, or do you try to remotely do a test?
If it's a remote, I wouldn't. Not saying our kids wouldn't cheat, but if I was at home doing a test, right, I'd do it a little different than, you know.
Hopefully there's no test.
I'm pretty sure if I'm taking a test at home, it's open book, right? I mean, that's not gonna work. The teachers will figure that part out. I mean, you give shorter quizzes or something, I don't know, yeah. The teachers will work those logistics out, but I'm pretty sure if I had to do a test remote, I'm doing open book. Right?
Adam, you had your mask printed. Was there something you wanted to contribute?
Well, I didn't know if I could clarify.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know if it was a schedule function, Dave, in your question, correct me if I'm wrong, but Model 1 and 2, the schedule that students go through on those days are exactly the same. There's for high school students, they're still going to have 8 periods. They're going to have lunch at the same time. So in practicing those routines for the first 2 weeks, when we come back, after the first 2 weeks, the kids are going to come in and walk into the same schedule. So that's not changing. So,
Just to clarify, the genesis of my question was my personal nature. I'm not prepared for the worst, hope for the best. So that was my question is, I would guide our staff to be prepared for the worst. Because if they prepare for the easy, and none of it's easy, I'm sorry, that's right, the lesser painful one, and then we got to go to the massive painful one, then not only is it massively painful, they don't have the time to correct and get ready. So that was kind of my question, and it sounds like you guys really have it. I just wanted to say, what I tell people, my kids, ask them, I say, prepare for the worst, and if it gets better, yay. You know, that's kind of why I asked the question. And you guys got it.
and I just didn't want to.
That's good to know what you said, though.
Anybody be confused
And
that
Adam's
those models
100%
are
right.
differently. Our schedules
Yeah.
remain the same in models 1 and 2 for students. So there is consistency of practice, which it would be hard if we did something for 2 weeks and then we came back in 2 weeks and now their schedules look differently. That won't be the case. We don't want to confuse our kids. We want to make it gradual as they ease into school.
So,
Yeah, Adam's 100% right. The only thing that would change is you get to see the other group of kids, which would be exciting,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Yeah, sure, yeah.
a question with regards to Model 2, because my eyes just opened up when you said, like, when we swing into Model 1, there's still gonna be some kids who don't want, the parents don't want them to come here, so we have to do all this stuff for them, have everything for them on distant learning, correct?
Right, there's
And
gonna
now
be,
this,
right?
I'm not trying to be an old ogre, but why? Why don't we say, this is the way we are, and if you don't want this, there's homeschool availability. Why do we have to do why do we have to invest in the resources in the whole mixing everything up? Because, I mean, I may not want to send my kid here when they've got the Asian flu going through for 6 weeks. Are we gonna make this now a standard? If you don't think your kid is safe here because of whatever is in the bug, we're gonna have a la carte program for you?
So you're saying, say everyone, you must attend at Sevastopol or you're out, if you're not in person?
I think it's getting the whole thing all jogged up now, because we got a wheel within a wheel going now.
So I would add that, like you said this before, either our building and our methods are acceptably safe or they're not. So I think what I would support is we are gonna go through measures, and these measures may change, right? And as you guys get smarter and we get smarter, and keep us posted. So we say we're gonna work hard and do these measures, and we'll put a video out there and say this is how we're gonna do it. I do question that, then why, and because there are times parents will keep their kids home, and that's their choice, but it really is a question of the staff. We're just saying, all right, staff, suck it up. And now, spring we kind of had to do that, it was just, we weren't ready for it, and that's okay. So that's why, the only reason I think it's a valid question.
You are cutting off some students that may have health conditions or conditions within their family that are beyond their control. Or even if their mom and dad say, you're not going and the kid strongly wants to come, you do what your parent tells you. So you're cutting off the education, the public education, and you can say, yeah, wait, go homeschool or find an online program and go. I think that's a disservice to those kids. And when COVID passes, whether it's spring of 22 or earlier, we want those kids back here with us. You don't turn your back on your neighbor, you reach out and help them. That's why anyone who picks remote learning is going to have a meeting with one of our administrators and sit down with the family and say, okay, why are you choosing this? Is this best for your child? And this is the system we're going to have for checking out. Yeah, it's another layer of work for our teachers, I understand that. But we can't give up on those kids or say, hey, you got to homeschool, you're just,
I don't think we're not giving up on them.
We run into some legal issues here as well.
I don't think
and
about
some
legal
financial
issues. You can homeschool, and we can say it's in school.
But then we lose the finances.
The finances is another part of that picture, right?
Yeah.
But money's second to the kids.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, if they homeschool, we lose $10,600 per child. I mean, that's a fact. And if we lose 5 of them for homeschooling, I'm cutting a staff member in the 21-22 school year. Absolutely. But that's secondary to providing the education to the kids.
If they're not coming to school, there's maybe a health issue. There may be a personality type issue, and nobody can deal with those kids that have whatever those problems are better than Sevastopol staff. If there's any chance to that kid coming back to school, the Sevastopol staff will get them there.
We had a lengthy conversation about this as part of our committee work, and we really want to do what's best for students. We know the best learning environment for kids is here. This is the richest place that we can provide instruction. So if a parent comes to us with a question as if being virtual is better off for their students, we're going to talk to them about that. We're going to weigh the advantages, disadvantages. We're going to look at if there are accommodations in addition to what we're doing that will make a student feel comfortable, come here, alternative scheduling, whatever that might be. Our first priority is to put them in the richest learning environment possible. So it's going to be vetted through us, maybe through our counseling staff, whatever resources we have to put in place first. I don't think we're going to say, Dave's going to call me and I'm just going to say, yep, Dave, go ahead. That's not going to be the case. Dave and I are going to talk about why that might be important for his child and what we can do alternatively to make sure they have a rich experience. And maybe it's a period of time, maybe it's a softer start for that student, maybe it's maybe it is virtual learning, but we're really going to vet that to the best of our ability because this is where we do the work. In addition to that, we can't create 2 wheels, like you said, Jerry. That was a great analogy because we're going to stress out our teachers. We're going to lose staff. We're going to do less of a job in our classroom and virtually. So something's going to be sacrificed. So we can't do that either. So I know that we've been talking about this. We're meeting again on Tuesday. to talk about scheduling and this piece and creating a document form that we can go through to ask those questions, and really have good conversations, rich conversations.
Can I add something to that, Adam?
Please.
Also, within that document, we also thought that it was really important to have touch points with those families who decide that remote learning is going to be the best for them. So, very frequent check-ins, and if it's not working, or problem solving with them along the way, always with, well, you're welcome to come back to school, and always keeping the door open for them when it is right for the family to feel comfortable, or that we have, as a team, find the right accommodations that are going to make them feel comfortable. During the spring, we had an at-risk committee, and there were teachers that were on there. And I have to tell you, it was one of the most amazing things. Sevastopol teachers will go the extra distance for those kids who weren't necessarily genuinely connecting to remote learning. So through that process, it was so apparent that the staff is up for that sort of challenge. They're up to try and get the kids to be in school and to do whatever it takes to be successful. So I don't see us ever changing that drive or that mission that we have with kids if we do have some students who choose not to come to the setting. We're going to be there for them. So I just wanted to add that. We've already lived it.
That's fine. Additional comment to that? Thank you. The vetting process that we talked about, I really believe, I don't have a crystal ball, but I really believe that after those authentic conversations take place, many of the parents that kept reinforcing that nothing would make them comfortable, they're going to get comfortable. Because we have to have the conversation and the communication open enough, it is going to dispel some of the fears that families have about bringing their children back to school. Right now, there's so many unknowns that I think that was driving a lot of that commentary around not sending their children there. I think the numbers are going to go way down, particularly after this vetting process.
I just think that I would ask that you start crafting methods, because I respect some people are amazing, but you have a large staff and it's diverse. And so if this is part of their new job description, the evaluation criteria needs to be clear. So if a kid's failing, you know how to navigate through that, because maybe it's this particular staff member needs some help in this area. This other one might be a rock star and she's doing great. But I'm just, if we're committing to this, commit to the whole thing. Evaluation criteria, help him through that, just like everything else. That's why, that's the workload that you're biting off. And if we're going to step up and do it, then that's part of it. So I ask that you do that, your evaluations. How are you doing with remote learning? Because we know the reports are all the teachers approach remote learning a little differently. And that's personality driven, and that's great. But some are better than others. And so we need to find that your work ahead of you is make sure that if we're really going to commit to this and we're paying our staff with tax dollars, that's part of it. So please, I'm sure that's part of it in your head already, but I'm just saying it out loud.
So this calls for action. You need the board to decide on one of these for, not tonight, we can have a meeting next
Overall, I'd like to
week.
just approve the recommendation of the committee with the adjustments I've heard tonight, which would be mask required, screening, not, and don't screen, I guess what I heard. Don't screen, that doesn't sound right. No screening? I don't know what you call it.
temperature checks.
Give me a better word. It's after 9, I've lost it, all right.
Try if the tanks.
We just screened the superintendent, that's it.
Now,
I might need it.
the underlying thing we all said is this will change as needed, but do we want to put the target? That'd be very clear to the staff that the target is Model 2 for 2 weeks. And
I
then
plan on emailing the staff yet tonight, because I know they want to know before the parents know, and I want to send an email out to all parents tomorrow.
if we're going to make a motion, is all I was saying, do we want to actually say it that way?
Are you ready to make a motion tonight, or do you want more time to chew on this? and
I
do it
think we
next
should make a
week?
motion tonight. Then move on.
I think people want to know. I think.
Yep, the staff deserves an answer.
Parents deserve it.
Well, yeah.
We are getting.
Because even the soft start, they're going to have to plan for that. They're going to have to watch their kids half the time.
Yeah, they got the plan for till Labor Day, daycare, if that's the way we're going, but they also got to know that there's a lot, we all move, but still moving here.
Yeah, well,
We have a
We're
tentative
not
plan,
done
it could
sorting.
change. I mean,
Yeah.
that's.
Does someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we proceed, we recommend that we begin the school year for a period of 2 weeks with Model 2, moving into Model 1, with the goal of moving into Model 1 at 3 weeks, and that masks will be required for all students when they enter the building or when they enter a bus.
Students and staff.
Students and staff, correct, thank you. And that we will not do the screening by utilizing temperature checks of staff or students at this time.
I'll second that.
Is that it all, Carl?
Okay.
Give Carl a moment here.
Carl's ready, he'll read it back to us.
Carl will be signing up for the shorthand class first semester this year.
Okay, number one,
We
motion.
need a recorder for our laptop.
Okay. I have a motion by Mr. Warwick with a second by Mr. Weedman to approve committee recommendations of the Planning 2021 Committee to start school with Model 2 for first 2 weeks, requiring staff and students wear masks and not to do temperature checks, and move into Model 1 and starting the 3rd week.
Good job, Carl.
Questions or further discussion by anyone? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I'd like to make a second motion though to throw accolades at the planning committee for this document.
I second.
You got it. It's accolades, not bananas or oranges.
Should we,
Yes, we are all,
can I thank them?
we realize you met all summer long and.
Can I go through this list?
Sure, read the list for the.
Here's the members that did all this hard
TV
work. Casey Andrews, Callie Asher, Adam Bear, Katie Groders, Mark Hilzebeck, Aaron Hiltz, Lynn Cotty, Rock Lottenbach, Kyle Lukey, Melissa Margraf, Dan Petrina, Joel Shelsky, Kyle Schleiss, Stephen, Tuhalski, I should know that, right? Cindy Zellner Ehlers. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Good thought, Jerry. Then we have the nursing contract for 2020-21.
Handy, because I've got it in order in my packet. Basically, it's from Door County Medical Center. It's at the same rate as when we have a nurse for 4 hours a week, we need a full-time nurse.
What? I move we approve the contract.
Are you still working on the last one, Carl?
No, I'm good, go ahead.
Oh, was that a
Yeah, I
motion,
got it.
Dave?
Yeah, I'll move, and I didn't know if, I didn't have it right in front of me.
Right here, just so folks know, the cost for the nurse is $58,920 for a year.
This is full-time.
Full-time
Okay.
for when the students are here, plus training for staff, registration, student days, IEP meetings, yes.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
Is that, is there room in the budget for it?
We have room in our budget, yeah, so that's what we do.
And we done this last year.
The budget's gonna be all goofed up this year with things like this, but this will just adjust. We'll
I mean, it's
figure it
this,
out.
I definitely feel it's necessary, it's just
Yeah,
curious how it would.
we're gonna get some CARES money, we're gonna get some money from the, which is like, the CARES Act is under 60,000, and we're gonna get some from the governor, but we don't know how much or when that's coming. But our budget is, when Carl gets his budget report, and you got it in front of you right there, our budget's healthy, and taking a 1 or 2 year hit on an area like this isn't gonna, no, we gotta do this.
Like I said, it is necessary.
And we're gonna not do, one thing I didn't say is, we're not taking on extra initiatives with the staff this year. This is our initiative. So Yeah, no, this is a,
Okay, any other questions or comments on the school nurse?
The only comment I was gonna say, it might not be available, but if it comes up, or would we need more support at certain times, if the numbers go crazy, is that even an option to talk to the hospital about?
we'll manage and contact, I mean, she's got Door County Medical Center as her resource, you know, so they're not gonna leave us hanging.
Just
No.
because of the priority. I think.
Right, they're our partner in this.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion is carried. Then we're gonna move to the old business, item D, the revisions to the 2020-21 school calendar. And our audience is leaving.
It's late.
The exciting stuff's coming up. The calendar, in order to achieve the A and B groups, we, like I said, moved all our in-service and odd days to Wednesdays, and we balanced it out. And so we need this calendar to function as we want. I'm assuming when you guys went with recommendations as presented, that meant a 2:30 dismissal time as well, correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the calendar we need to approve at this time.
Well, if I could just interject, we had talked as well about if we would happen to flip into the original calendar, that those in-service days would now be the new in-service days.
Okay, yeah, what Aaron's pointing out is, this is the calendar, we're not switching back to the old calendar at all, we're staying with this one because it gets too confusing to say, oh, we're 100%, so we're on the original calendar. This is our calendar no matter what model we're in. All right, Aaron, that's what you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, and there was something else along that line too. Oh, I can't think of it. Oh, even if there's a snow day, we're not making adjustments. A and B days are A and B days, this stays, and if it's a snow day and A misses a day, they miss a day, that's just the way it is. And we know what's gonna happen is one group will have 3 snow days, the other one will have none, and some kids will complain that they didn't make snow days, and that's just the way life is. So this is the calendar, and that's it.
Would someone like to make a motion to approve the calendar?
I would move to approve the calendar for 2021 as presented.
I'll second that.
Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, we route back now to the consent agenda. Does anyone have any items they want removed from the consent agenda? Hearing none, it is approved by consent, including the $1,000 donation for the environmental outdoor education Echo Lab by Ruth and Carl Schultz. The administrator reports, Mr. Hiltz.
Thank you. I didn't have a lot to put in the report this month. Obviously, a lot of the work being done this month is getting things situated for how we're going to open up in the fall. So I want to thank all of you for supporting that decision. But I did want to take a quick moment just to say thank you to Mr. Lutke with all the extra things that are on his plate these days, the number of meetings that I know that he has to attend and getting information in and bringing those things forward and that kind of stuff. So just wanted to make sure that we took a moment to acknowledge his extra work.
Thank you. Mr. Baer.
Yes, thank you, and I think you've all seen what we've been busy with lately, but there is one piece that kind of coincides with this, and that's our athletic program. So what I want to do with you is share some information as we work as a conference to develop strategies to reinstate our athletes. So I have a handout here I'm going to ask, I can just hand it around if you don't mind, please. And I don't want to take a lot of time tonight because I know we've had a lengthy discussion, but I think we're all interested in how our athletes are coming back to our program safely, so I want to talk about that briefly. In my report, I did provide for you our plan for reinstatement, and this plan took place from July 1st through July 19th. And now we are at a point at which we need to move forward and make some further decisions. So that's what I'm giving you today. This is phase 2 of that reentry plan. Now when we talk about school reinstatement, we're dealing with the local community. We all know though that in order to keep our athletes safe, that extends beyond our community because our athletes participate in a conference that is 4 counties wide. So our our athletes are going all the way over to O'Connell County. So what we wanted to ensure is that we're making sure that when our athletes travel to those other schools, they're safe. What we've done with phase 2 of reopening, and I hope everybody has a copy of this now, but if you take a look at this, what we're doing is we're using the state resources that were given to us to ensure our students' safety. And what we are doing is we know this is a fluid situation. It changes on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and there's new guidance given us to us all the time. So this plan is in place from July 20th through August 20th. As a conference, our principals are meeting on a weekly basis, sometimes every other day, to talk about suggestions, ideas in order to do this. But I'm really proud of the plan that we brought forward. The main reason I'm proud of it is because we're doing it collectively. So we know that all of our athletes across our communities are being treated the same way, and I think that's really important to us. We don't want the perception of one school and having different opportunities than another school, and we don't want the perception of one school not being safe and one school being safe, because we know we're going to have to interchange athletes at certain times. So I'm really happy that we're working together, and this has been a team effort, and our conference has been wonderful in doing so. But what I want to point to in this phase, we are using the Department of Health Services to determine our risk level. So I put a graphic on the bottom of the page so you can see that. This is given to us every Wednesday at 2 o'clock. It's updated. It tells you where your county is at as far as risk. Okay, there are 3 risk levels: low, medium, and high. Right now, Door County, as of yesterday, just moved to the high risk category. Because this is a fluid situation, we want to know immediately and then put safeguards in place for our athletes. So when we move to a high-risk category, we then follow the WI sport-specific document that tells us how they can play. WI gave us a nice resource. The resource has every sport listed in it. I didn't give this to you, but you have the link on that page so you can review it for yourself. But in this document, we would go and we would have our coaches, because we can just communicate with our coaches that we're at a high-risk level. So we take all the high-risk precautions now until we get a new risk level, which is next Wednesday. So I go to cross country, I look at cross country, I go to high risk level, and I now know at high risk level that this is how my athletes can participate in cross country practice or competition. So it tells us at this risk level we have to do conditioning. There's no partner work, there's no sharing of athletic equipment. We have to remain in pods of 10, okay? When we go to a moderate risk level, it gives us different suggestions, all right? When we go to a low risk level, it gives us additional, it reduces restriction and gives us additional opportunities. Okay, so just generally in a moderate risk level, we can share athletic equipment, we can work with partners, we should still remain in pods. The thing about this though, and this is WI's guidance, is that we have to be in a low risk level in order to have competitions. All right, so if we're going to have competitions, we have to be in that low risk level, and I repeat it because it's so important. If we have a game against a Brown County school, okay, and we're at a low risk level, but they're at a moderate risk level, that game will not take place. All right, because we've got to ensure that we're not bringing infection to our community. So that was this is a general consensus of the Packerland Conference to keep our kids safe. We can, however, and we talked about this as a conference, is change our games. We have the officials. We're at a lower risk level, so is Southern Door, so is Gibraltar, so is Sturgeon Bay. We can schedule games with them and still take care of some of those games so we have competitive opportunities. So it's going to be a fluid, flexible situation. WI is, we've been in contact with Dave Anderson. He's seen our plan. He likes our plan so much as a conference that he's asked for copies of it so that he can share it with other conferences, because he sees the advantages of being fluid, flexible, and collaborating, which is what this plan does. It also takes the pressure off of Mr. Lidke, off of athletic directors, off of principals, off of school boards to make these decisions, because we're told our risk level based on infection rates. We know that, it's updated. And then our coaches, as far as communicating, and our parents and communicating with parents, we can put them to this document and say, this is the guidance. Now, working together collectively is really helpful, but there's also some drawbacks too. We're working on that too. You know, how do we cancel events? Is it a cancellation? Is it a forfeiture? We're working on those details. We're not done. This is a fluid document, just like all the other things we're working on. But this has taken a tremendous amount of work by several to make sure our athletes are safe. And I want to say I'm really thankful that we have Jordan from Door County Medical Center, as well as Brooke Tank has done a wonderful job. Our coaches have done a wonderful job. The first 15 days, we focused on conditioning, bringing kids back. We have 4 pods working in the Edge Camp. We have several students in our running program, and we're talking about bringing kids now in for practice. Come in 15 minutes early to practice. Make sure you've done your screening, temperature screening. Understand the guidelines, masks when you come in. All those things are happening already, so we're off to a good start. But what I will tell you is our athletics will look normal. We want that to be the case, but they're not going to look normal at Sevastopol. They're not going to look normal across the state. We see what all the resources that our professional baseball, Major League Baseball, that basketball has, and they don't have solutions either. So how can we get this right in our smaller communities without the resources and the experts that they have? This is a step in that direction to at least ensure safety. So I'm giving you that information to share.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
Just and maybe just if they talked about it already. So who sets it? Is it by county is how the levels are set by the health services? By the county? Yep. But that is not the whole conference.
That's correct.
So O'Connell Falls, or whoever's in our conference arena, or whatever, they can practice at a different level than our county can. So it is not fair, just to be clear, that's not mislead anybody. So if the conference wanted to be fair, the conference would take the highest rating and go that way. So just so we tell our athletes, I don't like to mislead our people. So Door County, and if because of our vacationers maintain us as high, the guys left of the bay will have a year advantage. And that's the one thing I would ask this august group, that if the conference truly wants to go by the words that you echoed here about being fair, that would be fairer.
Yeah, you're right.
But I know it's very challenging, and again, I'm glad you're doing this, and I know everyone's working hard, so I want to thank you for that, but, something to think about.
Are there any counties that are not high risk right now?
No.
I was going to say, in O'Connell, they've had 104 cases,
Yeah.
almost twice as many as Torres.
I think Kewaunee County has the highest infection rate in the state right now, according to their superintendent principal.
Well, that would be good to say then, is that everyone in the conference is at the same rating, then we accomplish it that way,
That's where we are right now. But Dave, you're right. There will be times when we're at different points, and that will happen. I think one of the reasons that we consider being variable though is because if we're low, we want to give our athletes a chance to play. It's not necessarily where if we were all say O'Connell County was high and we were low, our student athletes still won't be able to play Southern Doors.
Yeah, I understand. Now, is the Wisconsin Department of Health, does a single person set them for the whole state, or does each county have a different person?
We don't know how DHS determines it for each county.
Because all people are different, and so every county has a different person.
I would assume the state gave each county the guidelines for this is how you are low, medium, or high, right? They got to have a standard, I would think that'd be statewide. I don't know that. I don't know the ins and outs of DHS. I'm learning more every week.
Yeah, my assumption is the same, that there's some kind of percentage or threshold that when you hit a certain threshold of infections within the last, and I did read a little bit, they were giving us data based on the last 5 days or week.
Mrs. Margraf.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to, but 2 updates for you is, I know we have to have this new balance of new programming and balancing that with how to open up schools safely. But I did meet with Mrs. Tank for Gifted and Talented, and we both, agreed that, a short-term plan is to communicate with their families right away for the students who have been identified. For Mrs. Tank to spend some significant time relationship building with the students, because a lot of them she does not know. Student observations and collaborations with teachers to, we really want the families to know that because school might look different, our promise to them in that department is not going to waver, but we do have to recognize that we have to balance the 2 of those. So we had a really good discussion about that. Additionally, having the soft start opening also allows the opportunity for some more staff training and opportunities to tell staff a little bit more about the social emotional learning impacts of COVID. So CASEL, which is an organization for social emotional learning, has just come out with a new document to support students in the reopening of schools, not only students but staff. So that just came out today, so I was really happy. I wanted to let folks know. The document's called Reunite, Renew, and Thrive. So that will give us a lot of resources to be able to go through before we have staff train or staff in service, to be able to give more current information to our staff. So, and again, that soft start allows us to have that more intimate time with smaller groups of students to be more effective, as effective as we can be. So I wanted to pass that along. That's on my to-do list.
Mr. Lukey.
Pretty much everything I have is other places in the media. Yeah, I don't have anything unique that's not in someplace else.
I just want to say, I had a chance to talk to each of the administrators for an article for the newspaper that was attempting to highlight the extra efforts that went in by staff to engage students during this time, and the stories that I heard were amazing. Unfortunately, the editors only give us a certain number of words, so a lot of those great examples aren't there. I think the article's good, the guy that wrote it did a good job, the article's good, but I want you and the staff to know that those efforts were amazing, and I'm gonna find a different way to highlight those, maybe on Facebook over the next several weeks, because we don't know the things that those staff members did to serve their students and families. They were great. Equity Task Committee.
First meeting was July 9th. Sue, Cindy, and Lisa and myself met. We decided that next step would be to add Aaron and Melissa to the committee, and we tried to come up with a list of some employers in an area to add to that committee, some students, some other staff members, and some parents. So we did some brainstorming on that. We're going to utilize Mr. Bear to recommend some of his students, because a committee like this would be more geared for older students and younger ones. I don't know, Cindy and Sue and Lisa speak up on what else we did.
That's about it, I think. Just kind of got it off the ground and pulled in Aaron and Melissa.
And I did ask them to bring their calendars tonight to pick the next meeting date for that committee.
Okay. Do you want to do that right now?
Sure.
What are you thinking? Or not right now?
If you do it now, you can dismiss those three from the meeting.
Oh, motivation.
I'm just saying, I'm just saying,
That's why I said,
I'm
would
saying
we
it's
like to,
9:30, it's
would we
not
like to
too
do
bad
it?
to get them out of here.
Would we like to do it now? A date?
Sure.
You like being with us, don't you?
I do, Jerry.
I was
I
taking
do.
offense. I saw this gleam go through that mask, like, oh, yeah.
Is there a time of day?
I'm not in.
Do you have a
It's up to
date?
you.
Time of day?
Pardon me?
Time of the day?
And another thing that I have is this, do we want to meet before school opens? Or is this an after, it seems like there's some things that we need to work out. Not that this committee is, I'm honored to be on it, I just wonder the timing
I
with
think
all the
we
things.
certainly can wait until after school starts.
Mhm.
You can
Like
have
in
a lot of
September, once we get
Let's
up.
talk about that then at our next meeting.
That would, just because I don't want to bite off more,
Right.
We already got great direction, thank you for this plan, but now we get to dig our teeth into it.
Good. Okay. Cindy or Sue, did you have anything to add on that? Equity committee? No?
What was
Did you
your-
have anything to add regarding
No.
the equity committee?
No.
Okay, the athletic committee had a couple meetings.
Yeah, Dave and I and Brooke met with Markeen and Morphle on June 23rd. It was a good discussion. Brooke had prepared a
Memorandum of understanding.
we presented it to those two, and then Tuesday,
Well, just for record, our first meeting was just discussing moving forward, some history, and then it came out of that, we made a bunch of notes, and then Brooke did awesome and put together a document. Then we had a follow-up review to the next meeting.
and that was with the full park committee. It was Dan and Mark and
Huey.
Huey Dobner and Harlan. Anyway, it was a good discussion.
Did you guys want to go?
No, I do have a cake that I made.
Oh, yeah,
for you.
that's right.
Well, after this discussion, let's take a 5-minute
Okay.
recess.
Thank you. Okay, so we're gonna have that document for approval tonight?
No, so,
No.
do you want to go
Go ahead,
first,
you go ahead.
because I talk a lot.
You want the short version?
Yeah, I'll try.
Okay.
There was a very good dialogue. I believe there was a lot of detail captured, which is going to come to this group for understanding, and it makes understanding. The town board would like a higher level document, so to me, the communication intent is good. They just want it packaged differently because their board doesn't like the detail. So we're gonna have a higher level document, which we'll probably refer to an appendix, because we would like commitment, that's what, because if we're gonna bring WIA sanctioned games to these fields, we need commitment and plans and backup plans, so that we're ready. So I believe we're making progress, is 100% there? No, I do think the bottom line, we probably agreed to the 3,500 is a fair starting point, and we agreed there between the town has like a park group, and we have the athletic committee, with the athletic director. There'll be a lot of communication, improved communication, let's say, to make sure we're all clear in what's going on. And we're still probably have a little bit of fine tuning on the money and stuff like that. Because the one key thing, they just thought it was easier to do one lump sum, and we had proposed some other breakouts for better understanding because of our dollars,
Where's the money came from? Where we came up with the 3,500,
Yeah.
And we've got that document.
You do have the
we'll get
document in
tonight.
here, so if you have seen it or have time to see it, it does capture all the stuff we talked about. I think it's very good. I would like to say we're just gonna repackage it to make certain people happy, but the details in there I think are good, and we'll keep it, because I think Mark Hain and Brooke Tank, that will be theirs to use for
making sure
it's getting done, and quite frankly, coming back to leadership to say, hey, something's come up, we need to revisit, maybe a budget issue or something else.
Just to keep the math right, though, on your payment, you got normal year per game base, 16 to 20 home games at $87.50 per game, totaling $3,500. $87.50 for 20 games is $1,750.
I think that's
So-
per sport.
We're gonna, we're gonna take a break here. It's 9:42, we're gonna take a 5-minute break, because we do have that document to talk about within the meeting here. So we'll let them end with their committee report, and then we'll go back to Jerry's question after
it's
the
in the
break,
document.
when we get to that document. So, is there a motion to take a 5-minute recess?
I make a motion to take a 5-minute recess.
Second?
All in favor, say aye. Opposed, motion carried. 9:49, we'll call to order and pick up with budget report.
All right, Carl, you're up. Okay, I revamped the budget report per Jerry's request. It's a high level. Gives you the cash in each of the bank accounts for each of the funds that we have. I will next month change this up and put on there what each fund is. 10 is general, 27 is special, so I'll put that on the next time so you know which each fund is. And everything behind this report is where I got those numbers from. So if you want to go through and check my numbers and all that, you can look at it more in depth. But this is just high level, and then a few highlights on the bottom. I'll put that down there each month, things that were going on. The one that I want to kind of reiterate now, this time, is we transferred $104,000 into Fund 46 from the maintenance budget that was not used this year. So now we have, as you can see, we have $617,000 in Fund 46 that can be used now. As of July 1 was our 5-year anniversary date, because that had to be in there for 5 years before you can use, now we can use that money. And then we still have 2.9 million in cash coming. Most of that is tax revenue, and according to what Jason said, that we are getting, we will be paid in August for all of the remaining tax dollars we have coming, even though they have said that people can wait until October to pay them. School districts are gonna get their money in October, or in August. So other than that, if anybody has anything else they want on this report or any changes, let me know. But I just put this on a spreadsheet, and you know, I can fill in the numbers each month.
Questions for Carl on that? Thank you,
Thank you,
Carl.
thanks for doing it.
Problem.
Okay, looks like you're good. Facilities, Mr. Woodkey?
Facilities for the existing building. The elementary gym has the lights installed now. The last thing we're waiting for is the bleachers. Karen Krieger is going to work on a design concept for the vacant, the plain walls right now. Bleachers are scheduled to come on in. And door 16, which comes in the elementary gym from the outside, if you go by them, they're red and black. We like the quality of the doors. We're not happy with the installation. They're off a little bit, so we're not paying for them until the crew comes back and adjusts them so that they're correct. And the roof above us here and over there is being replaced as we speak on the site. The roof is as it's supposed to be.
So there are windows that have a big tape
No.
X on, and those are being replaced. Are the upper windows being replaced? No,
The
because those are
19
newer?
The 1965 part
Okay.
is the second floor over on the front is the 98 edition. So the 65 windows are being replaced, not the 98.
Okay.
But the 65 also goes on the second floor on the back side here.
And are we getting a floor cover for the elementary gym for plays, et cetera?
We are. And we haven't purchased it yet, but Dan Petrina's been researching and finding the best one. Our biggest issue with that is where to store it when you're not
Yeah.
using it. But storage is always an issue around here, but it's getting better with the shed we have. The building project, we have $1 million in contingency money. At this point, we've spent $67,855.39. We haven't spent all of that. That's what is in the change orders, and the change orders to be approved still. That's the total we're at so far. And then we have a bedrock contingency of $175,000. We're at $60,000 spent of that. We have two major parts of the project for that, though. The second elevator shaft over by the 91 edition has to be dug out, and then where they dug out fire suppression tanks, they have to now add some stone in underneath it. That's underneath where the greenhouse will be. So that's gonna be two pots of money that comes still out of that $175,000, but if we've only spent $60,000 so far, and that includes one elevator shaft, the next elevator shaft, and that stone, the stone I believe is gonna be like $18,900, and the second elevator shaft won't be there, so we're gonna be under budget in the bedrock CAD contingency, which rolls into our regular contingency there. So we've been meeting every Monday. We're not meeting this coming Monday, but the following Monday. And Jeremy from Myron's been really easy to work with, like with the figuring out where people are parking. And I do have him in the process of getting a bid. If you go in the back, you'll see a line in the asphalt that says cut. And on one side, that's where the asphalt is part of the project, and then the rest is on us. Since we have a company coming in to do that asphalt work already, we're gonna get a price to go different segments out, so if we have money at the end of the project, what we're gonna do with that driveway and parking lot out there, because otherwise we'll be parking on blacktop, or on gravel, and it doesn't, have a new building, you have gravel up front, and it's easier to get paved when you have a paving company here, so it's moving along, it's good.
again, so not enjoying the project as much as I thought I would with COVID going on, you know, but it's taking a back seat, you know, it's like, oh, okay, I thought that'd be my summer project, and it is one of my summer projects, but yeah. So that's what I know about building. Well, I don't know, any questions about the UCL back?
I have a comment
Yeah, go ahead.
for maybe, and this is probably just for consideration, came out of our town meeting, for maybe our next building and grounds meeting for discussion. There's a couple comments is, I know rock, and we don't like those rocks over there by the fence because of snow plowing and stuff, so maybe we'd like to get rid of them. Some of the history they had is they would like some, they're concerned about if this is gonna be our main drag, do we have any concern about kids shooting through that fence? And if so, it would be very unfortunate if there's a picnic going on over there. So just discuss the safety along the, that's why I was told, is that why the rocks were put there historically, I
The
guess?
big rocks were put there to stop kids from peeling out.
So, just because we're doing, we said it's our new main thoroughfare, it was a fair question, we thought we'd talk about it. And the only other thing that will, depending on how things come together, to get rid of, one of the options to help the water in the field, the baseball field in the town park, would be to discuss a drain that they would run over to the lower area, which would go through that driveway. So the comment was, if we chose, if the school chooses to pave that, let's keep the communication through the groups that we're setting up, so that maybe we put that drain in first, but that's not approved or anything, we're just talking. And that's why it's not a priority, but just, I wanted to pass it along, and then when we meet with the Building and Grounds Committee separately, you know, we'll just throw it on, you know, what we do with it, we'll just, who knows, but we'll keep the communication through the athletic group and the park group, if that's okay.
The driveway will just repave over, we won't dig it out or anything for a drain, or, you know what I mean?
His point is, no, the only comment there is, let's say we put a brand new blacktop driveway in, which we would like to get to, and then 3 months later, we cut a big
Dig it,
hole
cut
into
it,
it.
okay.
And put a, right, we don't wanna do that. So,
Okay.
so we'll keep them posted, sorry.
I mean, just to do it before the.
He wants to put a culvert with a drain tile in it. That's probably what they want to do.
Right, and actually, because we maybe even with a pump to get the water out of there. And not moving forward yet, but it was just a discussion, you know?
Okay.
It's a good item to put on the building and grounds.
Just to be on the same page, so that
Yeah.
That's good.
after we blacktop it, we don't have to cut it.
Sue, did you have anything you wanted to highlight out of your legislative report?
I would just like to mention something that has just come out, and that is at the federal level, and it deals with funding for COVID. Senator Patty Murray from Washington has introduced this, and Senator Tammy Baldwin has signed on to it. And it is a proposal that goes beyond the CARES Act, which you referred to earlier, Kyle. This is in addition. The proposal is for $175 billion with a B in funds for K-12 school districts through the Education Stabilization Fund. The bill specifically proposes to allocate almost $13 billion for Title I, $12 billion for special education programs. And these two items are separate from the $175 billion stabilization fund that would provide for school districts to shore up their budgets and meet critical needs. The bill would provide $4 billion in emergency funding for the federal E-rate and $4 billion for career and technical education programs. The state WASB is urging us to contact Representative Baldwin, or Senator Baldwin, and Representative Michael Gallagher to let them know what our needs are financially. I know we talked about a number of things tonight. We talked about the hand sanitizer, we talked about masks, we talked about the nurse, the cleaning, all of that stuff. Kyle, can you give me any ballpark idea of a figure that this is going to?
Not at this point, a ballpark, no, because I would start with the nurse at 58,000
Right.
and say that's a big chunk, you know.
Right.
All the rest, yeah, I couldn't. you know, we are plexiglass and all.
Yeah.
I can't fathom it, you know, yeah,
Okay.
I can't tell you. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I couldn't give you a solid number that I could bank on. I'd have to give you a really conservative low number, I'm afraid.
Well, what I can do is I will contact those two people tomorrow, and I will mention the nurse and the price, and then I will mention all these other things that we've talked about tonight as being additional expenses, but we don't have a dollar amount yet. But I think it's important that we go on record. This is what they're looking for, is feedback from school districts and the technology equipment that you've mentioned, Stephen. I don't know if you have
Yeah,
any.
Stephen could get, we know what he's purchased so far.
Right.
But it's the unknown of what's still rolling out.
If you could shoot me an email on any dollar amount you have, you know, for hotspots, for.
The iPads.
Yeah, for sure.
Chromebooks, whatever.
iPad stands, everything.
Yep.
Even an approximation, you know,
Okay, yeah.
would be helpful. Just shoot me an email tomorrow sometime if you could.
Sounds good.
Or Monday at the latest. Okay, great. I think we've got to let these folks know that we need this money, especially with us going for a referendum in the fall. So that's what I had to add. Thank you.
We had the athletic director's report, so you can all read that. How would the board feel about tabling policies to our next meeting?
So move.
Any concern with school operations? Yeah.
No, we can function.
Because we've been doing very good at keeping up with these, so, yeah.
Okay, so Jerry's moved to,
Second.
to table the second reading of policies to a future meeting. Questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. And that would include the second reading, all of those policies under old business. How about tabling the discussion on board retreat to a future meeting? I think that deserves a little discussion.
I would move to table that until we get through some of the next challenges. Second.
Questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carl, do you have it? Okay. We talked about school calendar. Okay, Jerry had a question on the town park document. And this is not for approval tonight, this is just for information?
Yes, right, right, correct, we're not ready, because the format is not liked by all, so we're gonna.
Okay. So then, input,
The
questions?
question was a math issue. It says that you pay X number of dollars and totals 3,700 or something there.
35.
So
That's actually at 20 games at that figure, it's 1,750.
Yeah, baseball and softball.
Right, I think that's per team, per sport. Baseball and softball, there's 16 to 20 home games for baseball, 16 to 20 for softball.
Oh, that's
So
good.
1750 and 1750 is where the 3,500 is coming.
Okay.
And as we discussed with Mark and that sometimes even with the rainouts, they prep the field, they have staff trying to get it ready, and 1 o'clock is when they have to make the call, or they still have to pay their guy to clean it and get it ready. So we just decided 3,500.
What does the town do to the field?
I'm sorry?
What do they do?
If you go to the next page, where it says, Town of Sevastopol shall undertake the following activities, it tries to explain what they do, when they do it. So, and that's the type of commitment we support doing, and with Brooke worked with Mark on what they, and quite frankly, this is what they typically do. But we just want it documented and clear, so that as the people come and go, there's no confusion. And then,
Pretty much all the safety, you know, they've done a lot of, Mitch Anderson and the town have addressed most of, pretty much all the safety concerns. Like they had some holes, in various spots, they had some lips, they fixed that, they've said that hardball field is in probably the best shape it's been.
It looks really nice. I don't play hardball, but it looks really nice.
And some, I've gotten feedback from some of the Cubs that they
As long as we don't get entangled in their day-to-day maintenance requirements there.
No, well, what we're trying to do, in fact, so two things, well, we put, Brooke did a great job and threw this payment idea together. And the first time we really talked about the money side of it was in our last meeting. So like he said, we pulled out the rainouts, because they did articulate that there is some prep work they do anyways. And the school provided staff, which we thought was a really good idea. For starters, they didn't really want to agree to that, but I think the underlying key is, we all agreed that with the athletic committee, between Keith and myself and Brooke, we will make sure we're supporting their park meetings consistently. So then if in the event they're having problems with staff in spring, there'll be lots of communication and we'll handle that. And then if it's a one-time thing, maybe we find a way to help or volunteers through Mighty Pioneers or Booster Club. But where we're leaning towards. But then if all of a sudden it becomes an every year thing, you know, the cycle here, we'll revisit that and say, okay, this ain't working. So that's, I think, this is where, and I think Brooke talked to you about some of this. We're trying to be flexible to get this in place, but the key is, and so, you know, they want less detail, we want more detail, so we're trying to find a happy medium. But the key is we'll keep on top of it. And not that they were in the past either, but this way we'll have documents, there'll be no confusion, this is what we're doing. Your point will better clarify the games and stuff like that.
Okay, so this will be coming back to us.
Yes, we'll bring it back to you for.
So you'll be bringing it back to us.
And there was history found out too, right? Like we own the softball dugouts even though we don't own the.
Yeah, well, this is a great point. There was some statement.
I didn't know I could own a house.
There was some statement, well.
Yeah.
It's a condo.
No, yeah. So they said that.
It's like a condo agreement.
There's a lot of history, and this is why Dick smiled. I'm only guessing, because I guess in the past, the school said, we will build dugouts for you by the girls softball team, and we'll maintain them. But there's no documentation anywhere. And that's what I said. I go, it's your property. You can do whatever you want with them, you know. So, but those are things that we use as examples to say why there's value in this documentation. So if we're going to do some investment, or if there's a big safety issue that is identified at some point, and we need it for our kids, well, we might come back to this group and say, hey, or through Kyle for budget purposes, and say, hey, we really need to throw in some money so we can play our season here. The only other thing that he kept saying, which I think we'll recommend, is he liked the words, we are going to designate that field as our home field. And so we're like, okay, even though I looked at Brooke and Keith, who've been around for a while, I'm like, I think if you ask anybody, we all know that's the home field for the Pioneers. But I respect that, you know, that's cool, so we'll put that in there.
That's because they didn't like it when they played West Jacksonport for 2 seasons. Or not West Jacksonport, Jacksonport. Softball, St. Jackson.
Keith led it, I think it was your idea. Everyone agreed with, it's the right answer. Sevastopol Pioneers need to play at Sevastopol Town Park. We need to get it figured out, and Brooke has led the way, and I like where we're going, but we need a better document to come back to you guys.
And our money that we're contributing is minuscule of their total park budget anyway, so it's.
Yeah.
So we're not, $3,500 that we haven't paid yet this year, we're still waiting for the memorandum of understanding to be complete?
Well,
now,
I would recommend, I mean, the work, all this work has been done to the fields. I mean, it's safe to play on, they've addressed all the things. I would recommend we pay the $3,500. I mean, it's.
We've got a motion though on the books from last month to not do it.
Well, we
right?
talked about,
Got the memorandum.
Okay.
what we wanted to propose is, we talked about that. We said, and we told them there at the meeting that, hey, for the record, the motion says we need a signed document. We kind of thought that we would come back to you guys to see if we could propose, can we do an additional, a change in, vote on a different motion to pay these guys, we'll pay them, you know, move on with it. Maybe in good faith or whatever, but
Brooke
we'll
is
come back.
redrafting
So it's, you know, it's
a broader, higher level agreement. This is going to be an attachment or appendix to that.
Well, I want to work in good faith with them, but do they need the money right now? I mean, are they broke?
no, I don't think they were probably good either way.
I mean, we can wait. We'll get it and we'll bring it to the next.
So you're recommending we pay them for never playing a game then? The contract says like rainouts, we get money back. And
Well,
so
we're gonna pull
COVID
that.
is like a rainout.
Yeah.
So you should
You
get
have the COVID issue too, so.
So you should get a discount.
Well,
You weren't able
Well,
to play.
the one thing we're trying to
This way we did do more
articulate
work
is,
than they
if you
normally
look
have,
at, if you read through what they do,
long-term
they
maintenance.
invested,
It'll be a long-term
they
benefit, the work
invest,
they
they
get.
invested money
Right.
out of, I mean, they're over their budget.
Yeah, that's a
for what
side
they've
note, yeah.
stuck into the field. So I mean, like I said, the $3,500 is.
well, here's some, I'll say this for discussion, right? So we talked about realistically all our options, right? So one option is we could build our own baseball field, because we have WIA sports events that are our requirements on the books. So we could build our own baseball diamond, which would be a lot more expensive than $3,500. We could also bus our kids to the other, and we talked to this with the town park, I mean, because he's like, well, what if we don't want to agree to any of this? I'm like, well, then you're a town park, it was a good discussion. Then you would have a town park where kids and families play at your own risk, but we're not bringing WIA sanctioned athletic events to something like that. So that all made sense. So that's why, if we could articulate in more detail if you really want to get painful. They are putting labor and stuff into that field, and yes, other people support it. It seems reasonable, and for us, they specifically, they prep the fields. Now, this year was a little different, but they were prepping. Other people do play there, yeah. Yes.
They pay?
They pay, yes.
It's two Cubs pay, the Babe Ruth leagues, they all pay. We don't know what they pay.
Yeah, the
but
values we don't know.
we do know that Sevastopol gets the first if there's
Well,
a Sevastopol Pioneer game and somebody else wants a thing.
here's the thing that I think is important, and I think
It's your fault.
Trying to say-
Because your kids, you don't live in Sevastopol.
Right.
Your kids using that field, see?
Mine don't either, so maybe we're not the best for the
I think, from my perspective, the money we're paying is a commitment from them that we get priority and we get our games, and then they prep all that stuff. I mean, and they prep do all the normal seasons, they do all the mowing. If you read through here, they gotta have it freshly mowed within 2 days of a game. Everything's gotta get marked, garbage has gotta get cleaned up, so there is things they do specifically for our games. And I think I could better, understand there are some labor that they have to do to get ready for our games. So I feel more comfortable being able to, maybe with the notes better, but to articulate there's some investment. And I do think it is a good deal for us, and I think it helps them to have a great town park, So I don't know if that.
So when do you
Not to belabor the
anticipate
issue,
that
but-
document being in final form?
What's that?
When would you anticipate the document being in final form?
Well, next meeting for sure.
For sure. next meeting.
We were pushing for today, but then,
Because they have their.
quite
board
frankly, our
meeting.
AD is doing all our admin work. Sorry, so she had some other things she was working on, so.
But you would enter a meeting with the town board, park plan?
We need to get this and then update it and back. We do not have a date for that. That's a good one.
You would agree though, many of the people who own the school own the park.
I absolutely agree with that.
Yes, but to Dave's point that he said, we can go and play over there. I mean, it's a town park. But the commitment that we have, they do work for us to get it ready. So that kind of falls out of scope of a tax.
I mean, but
I get where you're
I'm being
coming from.
philosophical. They should want to go out of their way to make that a nice, for their kids to play there. It's their constituents' kids who are playing there.
Primarily,
It's
but
not like
there
it's
are-
some, you're
there's
some.
my kids, Dave kids that were not Sevastopol, right?
We're not coming from Fish Creek to play at a Sevastopol.
Right.
No, I
We're all-
understand,
We're
but
all
that's a minority.
Sevastopol
That's-
pioneers, but
it's
we're
the-
not all Sevastopol taxpayers.
To me, it's the principle of the thing.
It's a mindset.
It's a financial thing, Jerry. Look at it this way.
Think of it.
We are an
think of it this way.
organization that have to provide softball and baseball fields to our school.
Think
This
of it-
is the cheapest option to do it.
Think of it this
Because
way.
we
I don't
can,
pay
because
Sevastopol
what do we
town
pay to
taxes.
maintain a football field?
Right.
And the track,
So
and the track
my
needs to be
school
redone, by the way.
taxes is going
right?
to the park.
So it gets over $3,500 like that. So if it's a compromise, working together in a small town, that's what I would argue, Just like we pay for the police officer. There's a police officer that is paid for by tax dollars, but the school pays some of his salary. Because I asked the same question
Despite
then.
the fact that somebody over there said we should just lop a room off of our school to get money for something, we should pay
Rise
these
above,
people.
we're being good people in our community because we want our kids to be
So,
better people. and all
I think if
nice
this is
stuff.
coming back, what do you
We'll-
think? If
we'll
this is
take-
coming back next week, next
We'll
month,
share.
can we just
Yeah.
let it go and pay next month?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
Not gonna
Move
die
on.
in the ditch,
Let's move
not
on.
gonna die in the ditch this time.
Okay, we've done fundraising policy.
You have fundraising policy in front of you, and I've suspended all fundraising when we had COVID this spring, and I have some folks chomping at the bit to get ready for their organizations. I've told everybody, we'll figure it out. If you fall in a shortfall, we'll float you until you get your fundraising. So we're okay, but I just want to know when you think we can start fundraising again, or do you just want me to, 'cause I just took the authority to say we're not fundraising right now because of the unknown.
I think this is my opinion, we don't fundraise right now because number one, we don't want our kids out going door to door trying to sell things. And number two, there is a hardship in the community and they don't need to be knocking on doors where there's a hardship.
Okay, that's
My opinion.
I agree.
I do too.
Okay, then I'll stay with what I did.
Would you like to table the first reading of the policies under new business?
I move we table the reading of new policies under new business.
Questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We probably have to approve the faculty handbook so they can get that rolling.
Correct.
I move we approve the 2020-2021 faculty handbook.
Second.
Does anyone have questions or comments about anything they read in the handbook? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And then we have a motion, we need a motion of the employee handbook.
And I do need to point out on page 22 and 30 of the employee handbook, bereavement leave, it says it's been subtracted time from their sick leave. We don't do that practice. So it should say not subtracted from sick time.
What is that, the bereavement?
Bereavement does not come out of sick
That's
leave.
additional, okay.
That's bereavement leave, right?
Basically, it's, someone dies in your family, you can go to the funeral. You know, we didn't think it was fair that your mother dies, you don't have sick leave on the books that you can't go to your mother's funeral.
Right.
It's just not good practice.
Someone like to make a motion with that correction?
With the correction that was just stated, I make a motion to approve the 2020-2021 employee handbook.
Second.
Question is,
questions
do we
or discussion?
approve this, do we approve these handbooks just because we've always approved these handbooks? I mean, to me, the handbooks are an internal operating part of the business and it's done by administration. It's not really a board issue.
There's,
Or is this as a state requirement?
no, the employee handbook, you need to approve. It's kind of like, this is kind of replacing negotiations and the contracts of the past. So employee handbooks are different. The faculty handbook, this is the first place I've been where the board approves the faculty handbooks, and we do it because we always do it. Because I don't know why, we're not gonna change anything that's in there as far as what the schedule is, or, you know, if you read through all those pages.
So in the future, we could talk about not having that.
Not doing the faculty ones, right. But the employee handbook you have to do, because that's an agreement between
So this is like
the employee conditions and whatnot, right? Yeah, salaries, rates, those kind of things, absolutely.
I put that down to something that we talk about in the future where we.
Or can we just put it on the books right now?
I heard it, and we won't put on the.
Okay, great. Then we do have to give the notice to parents on academic standards.
Hold it, you gotta approve the, you
gotta approve
gotta,
the-
you have a
Oh.
motion, you haven't.
Thank you. Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Then we do have to give the notice to parents and guardians on academic standards.
Typical notice.
Anything you want to say about that? No.
No,
It's the notice that we have to give every year, so would someone like to make a motion to approve it?
So moved.
I'll second.
Questions or discussion on the academic standards notice?
This doesn't affect, I mean, with this whole, we don't know what our next year's gonna be with COVID and how many hours we're gonna have in class, we might be.
we don't know if there'll be a state report card a year from now. You know, okay, then we don't know what the way they waived testing this spring,
Unknown,
so
I'm
if we
sorry,
don't
yeah,
have
you're right.
testing, we don't know. Yeah, we don't know.
Any other questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Motion to accept the resignation of the baseball coach.
Move to accept the resignation of Kent Berkeley, baseball coach. Second.
Questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. That concludes our regular business, so I'll take a motion to convene to executive session.
Move to convene an executive session.
Second.
I'll take a roll call vote. Sue?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried at 10:21 PM. We are back in open session at 11:14 PM.
You'll need to unlock your iPhone first.
Sorry.
Are you serving us breakfast, by the way?
Is there a motion? If you were Carl Schultz, you'd be making us pancakes.
I'll make a motion to approve John Anderson as the varsity boys basketball coach.
Second.
Are there questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Move
Can I
to
have a
approve
motion
Ron
for Ron?
Frank as assistant basketball coach.
Second.
Questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. What is the name of that? We need a motion on the aid.
Elizabeth Fahey.
Elizabeth Fahey, would somebody make that motion?
So, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I would move to approve Elizabeth Fahey as the special education associate.
Second.
Questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And then on the COVID language for the employee handbook.
Move to approve the modified draft policy in the language that we,
Of the COVID-19 policy and employee handbook appendix, right?
right.
I'll second that.
Are there questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We've got a regular school board meeting on August 20th. The annual school board meeting is August 25th.
And I did include in my report some discussion on that annual meeting, which WASB has come out with now. We don't draw big crowds, but there are some concerns about whether it is held virtually or whether it is held in person, and there are some detailed guidelines on how to do that.
Yes. Make sure our leaders are residents of the district, yes, a primary resident.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried and adjourned at 11:16 PM.